That's right. Today we're covering One Piece, created by Ichiro Oda. One Piece started as a manga series in 1997 and became so insanely popular that it was adapted into an anime that's been running since 1999 and it's still going strong. It follows the story of Monkey D. Luffy, a rubber boy with a straw hat who's determined to become the king of the pirates. Why rubber, you ask? Remember those weird fruits I mentioned? Yeah, they're called devil fruits, and Luffy ate one that turned his entire body into rubber. So can Luffy and his Straw Hat crew navigate through the most dangerous seas, take down the world government, and find the One Piece? Well, you better grab your meat, settle in your favorite spot, and get ready because this is going to be one wild ride. Here we go. You know how every great story has those absolutely wild childhood moments that shape someone into who they are? Well, Monkey D. Luffy's childhood was basically a crash course in chaos. Imagine being raised by your marine grandpa who thinks throwing you into ravines is quality family bonding. Yeah, that was little Luffy's life, thanks to good old Garp. But everything changed when a certain red-haired pirate rolled into town. Picture this mighty tiny 6-year-old Luffy, looking at Shanks and his crew like they were the coolest thing since meat. And what does this absolute mad lad do? Stabs himself under the eye just to prove he's tough enough to be a pirate. And Shanks was probably there like, kid, what are you doing? But wait, it gets better. Our boy Luffy finds this weird-looking fruit, thinks hey free snack and boom, accidentally eats the Gomu no Mi. And then we've got this mountain bandit Haguma showing up, acting all tough, dumping sake on Shanks' head. Luffy's sitting there getting mad while Shanks is just cleaning up like it's no big deal. But this story takes a wild turn when Haguma kidnaps Luffy, throws him into the sea, and then plot twist gets eaten by a sea king. Talk about karma! But the real moment that changed everything, Shanks diving in to save Luffy, losing his arm to that same sea king, and still having the coolest smile on his face. And that's how Luffy got his most precious treasure, that iconic straw hat straight from Shanks himself with the promise to return it when he becomes a great pirate. Little did anyone know this rubber boy from the middle of nowhere would start saying the exact same things as the pirate king himself. Even Shanks couldn't believe it when he told Rayleigh later. So what's the first thing our future pirate king does when he sets sail? Gets sucked into a whirlpool. But don't worry, this rubber boy survives by using his galaxy brain to hide in a barrel, which honestly might be the smartest thing he's done so far. And then boom, he literally crashes into his first adventure. While some Alvida pirates are trying to open what they think is just a barrel of sake, Luffy pops out like the world's weirdest jack-in-the-box and accidentally knocks them all out. That's when he meets this nervous wreck named Kobe, who's basically living his worst life as Alvida's cabin boy. Speaking of Alvida, imagine calling yourself the most beautiful pirate in all the seas, and then getting absolutely demolished by one punch from a kid in a straw hat. But hey, at least she helped Kobe find his backbone. My man went from please don't kill me to you're the ugliest thing on the seas real quick. But the real fun starts when Luffy hears about this demon guy named Zoro being held at some marine base. Like any normal person, Luffy's first thought is perfect. Let's make him join my crew. I mean, who wouldn't want a guy nicknamed Pirate Hunter on their pirate crew? And oh boy, Shellstown is a whole circus. You've got this marine Captain Morgan walking around with an actual axe for a jaw, his spoiled brat son Helmeppo terrorizing everyone, and Zoro tied up in the middle of it all because he checks notes saved a little girl from a mean dog. What a demon, right? Luffy being Luffy, sees this entire situation, and thinks you know what this needs? Chaos. First he punches Helmeppo, because honestly, who hasn't wanted to? Then accidentally breaks Morgan's statue, oops, and then starts running around the marine base with Helmeppo as a human shield looking for Zoro's swords. The best part, Luffy shows up with all 3 of Zoro's swords like, hey, join my crew or die here. Talk about a job offer. And what does he do when the marines start shooting? Uses his rubber body as a human bouncy castle and sends all the bullets flying back. And just like that, the Pirate King gets his first crew member, a guy who fights with 3 swords because apparently one wasn't cool enough. They even helped Kobe achieve his marine dreams along the way, which they celebrated by having Luffy punch Kobe in the face, because nothing says goodbye friends like a fist to the face, am I right? So picture this, Luffy and Zoro are sailing along, 2 guys with absolutely zero navigation skills between them, when Luffy gets this brilliant idea to catch a bird for lunch. Spoiler alert, the bird catches him instead, and this is how our future Pirate King ends up getting yeeted across the sky, right into Orange Town. Talk about making an entrance. Luffy literally crashes between this orange-haired thief named Nami and some very angry pirates, and when these guys knock off his precious straw hat, oh boy, they learned real quick why you don't mess with the hat. Now Nami, she's playing 4D chess here, pretends to team up with Luffy just to tie him up and hand him over to this circus reject called Buggy the Clown. Like seriously, this guy's got a red nose that would make Rudolph jealous. And what does Luffy do while he's trapped in a cage? Calls Buggy Big Nose because apparently he wants to die faster. But here comes the plot twist. Buggy can split his body parts like a human jigsaw puzzle, thanks to his devil fruit. And just when things are getting wild, we get this wholesome side quest quest with Chochu, absolute legend of a dog guarding his dead owner's pet shop. And what does Luffy do after beating up Buggy's pet tamer Moji and his lion? Gives the good boy the last box of dog food, because that's what heroes do. Speaking of Buggy, this dude makes the terrible life choice of stabbing Luffy's straw hat. Big mistake. Huge. Turns out Buggy knew Shanks back in the day, but Luffy's not having any of that comparison. While Buggy's floating around like a deranged puppet show, Luffy's just there like, hey, your feet are still on the ground, and starts tickling them. Who thinks of that in a fight? The finale. Nami ties up most of Buggy's body parts, genius move, and Luffy sends what's left of him flying with a Gomu Gomu no bazooka. And just when Nami agrees to join the crew, they have to run from angry townspeople because Luffy has zero chill and straight up admits to knocking out their mayor. But the real MVP, Chochu, comes in clutch again, stopping the mob so our crew can escape. And Luffy, being Luffy, leaves all the treasure behind to help rebuild the town. Nami's reaction goes from "I'm gonna kill you" to laughing because honestly, what else can you do with this rubber-brained captain? Let's take a quick detour to possibly the weirdest island ever. But hey, time to move on to Syrup Village, where we meet the world's worst liar. This guy shows up claiming he's got an army of 80 million men, but plot twist, it's just 3 kids with vegetable names. Really, the son of Yasop, that sniper from Shanks' crew who wouldn't shut up about his kid. Now enter the most sus butler in anime history, Klahadora, who's actually the notorious pirate Kuro. This guy's whole plan is basically become a butler, kill the rich girl, profit. Real creative there, buddy. Luffy and Usopp overhear this master plan, but of course Luffy gets hypnotized and falls off a cliff. Then we get this absolutely genius plan to stop pirates with cooking oil. But whoops, wrong beach. While everyone's running north, Luffy's out here following what feels cold, because apparently that's how directions work in his rubber brain. And just when things can't get any dumber, Luffy gets hypnotized, again once, but this time into an absolute unit who rips off the front of a pirate ship to use as a baseball bat, then falls asleep under it because that's just how his day is going. The final showdown with Kuro is wild. This guy's running around with these dollar store Wolverine claws, thinking he's hot stuff, but Luffy's like, nah fam, and turns it into the world's most violent game of tag. Kuro's zipping around with his out-of-control murder mode attack, but turns out that's not the best strategy when your opponent can stretch like rubber and use your face as a speed bag. After sending Kuro packing with his own crew, literally, they get the sweetest reward, an actual ship, the Going Merry. And Usopp joins the crew, completing the most chaotic recruitment process ever, and just like that, the Straw Hats are now a crew of 4, a rubber captain, with no sense of direction, a 3-sword swordsman, who's even worse with directions, a thief, who might steal their ship, and a liar with a slingshot. Let's take a quick detour to possibly the weirdest island ever, where Luffy meets a guy stuck in a treasure chest. No, seriously, meet Gaiman, who's basically been living his best life as a jack-in-the-box for 20 years, and when Luffy finally climbs up to get his treasure, empty boxes, talk about the world's longest wait for nothing, welcome to the Sabaody arc, and manages to destroy someone's rock bed with terrible aim. But hey, at least it leads to meeting Johnny and Yosaku, 2 bounty hunters who are basically what you'd get if you ordered Zoro from Wish. Speaking of disasters, Luffy's first interaction with the Baratie, he accidentally redirects a marine cannonball right into it. Smooth move, rubber boy. And this is how he ends up as the world's worst chore boy, breaking more dishes than a Greek wedding. Enter Sanji, the chef who kicks marine officers as a hobby and feeds starving pirates, because why not? Luffy's immediately like, you're joining my crew, and Sanji's like, nah bro, I'm good. Classic recruitment strategy, but then Don Krieg shows up. This guy's basically what happens when you combine a naval armory with an ego problem. First he's all weak and starving, then Sanji feeds him, and surprise surprise, he tries to take over the restaurant. Who could have seen that coming? Everyone saw that coming. Oh but wait, plot twist, while all this is happening, Nami straight up yoinks their ship, and then double plot twist, Hawkeye's Mihawk shows up and turns Krieg's ship into floating IKEA. Poor Zoro tries to fight him, and gets his world's greatest swordsman dreams temporarily postponed by getting sliced up. Now we've got Luffy versus Krieg and his discount Power Rangers squad. There's Pearl, who sets himself on fire when he gets a nosebleed, weird flex but okay, and Jin, who's actually kind of cool but has the worst boss ever. Krieg's out here throwing everything but the kitchen sink. Spikes, bombs, poison gas, you name it, but the best part, Luffy beats this walking armory by basically playing the world's most violent game of pinball. He's getting stabbed, blown up and netted, but still manages to give Krieg the spin cycle treatment and slam him into the Baratie. And finally, Sanji joins the crew. Turns out all it took was his co-workers being absolute jerks to him and making terrible food on purpose, but not before we get the most emotional goodbye involving soup ever. So now Luffy's got his cook, who can fight with his feet because his hands are for cooking, and they're off to chase after their thieving navigator. Alright, time for the Arlong Park arc, where we find out why Nami ghosted the crew. Turns out she's working for Arlong, who's basically what happens when you cross a shark with a landlord from hell. First, Luffy and Sanji have this amazing encounter with Momo, a sea cow that makes the mistake of trying to eat their lunch. Bad move, buddy. You just got promoted to their new Uber driver. Though the ride ends with them yeeting themselves across the island and using Zoro as a landing pad, then Johnny drops the bomb that Nami killed us up. Except plot twist, she didn't. She's just playing 4D chess trying to save everyone. But when Luffy hears all this drama going down, what does he do? Takes a nap. Seriously, because that's apparently how our future Pirate King handles crisis management. But the real gut punch comes when this Marine Captain Nezumi, who's definitely not corrupt, raids Nami's house for her stolen money. And when Nami finally breaks down asking for help, Luffy just plops his precious hat on her head and heads straight to Arlong Park like a rubber wrecking ball. Speaking of Arlong Park, Luffy's grand entrance is basically, which one of you is Arlong? Cool, catch these hands, then proceeds to use poor Momo as a living wrecking ball. But because Luffy's got his feet stuck in concrete classic Luffy, he ends up taking an unwanted swimming lesson. The fight with Arlong is absolutely wild. We've got Luffy using Arlong's own teeth as weapons, Arlong using his nose like a discount sword, and the whole thing ending up in Nami's map room. And when Arlong starts talking about Nami like she's his property, oh boy, Luffy goes full interior decorator and remodels the entire tower by destroying it. After sending Arlong on a one-way trip through every floor of his own building, Luffy emerges from the wreckage to declare Nami his navigator. And just when you think it's over, Nezumi shows up trying to take credit, only to get a crash course in Straw Hat diplomacy. The whole thing ends with the best farewell ever. Nami stealing from the entire village one last time before jumping aboard, so the Straw Hats are sailing along, minding their own business, when Nami pulls out a newspaper. Boom! Luffy's got a 30 million berry bounty. 30 million. Suddenly, a detour is in order. They decide to hit up Loguetown, which, fun fact, is where the Pirate King, Gold Roger himself, kicked the bucket. Talk about a tourist trap. Naturally, Luffy, being Luffy, immediately heads to the execution platform, because you know why not. Now picture this: Luffy's up on the platform, chilling, when Alvida shows up. But wait, she's skinny. Apparently she ate a devil fruit, and now she's all slippery. She's also suddenly a Luffy fangirl. Classic. But before Luffy can even process this glow-up, the Buggy pirates crash the party. Buggy, still salty about getting his butt kicked, decides to give Luffy a taste of his own medicine, a public execution. Luffy's trapped, Buggy's got his sword ready, and things are looking grim. Buggy asks for Luffy's last words, and Luffy, ever the optimist, shouts that he's gonna be the Pirate King. Because duh. Zoro and Sanji try to save the day, but it's too late, or is it? Bam! Lightning strikes the execution platform, taking out Buggy and leaving Luffy completely unscathed. Talk about divine intervention. Zoro and Sanji grab Luffy, and they make a run for it, dodging Marines left and right. They even run into Smoker, who uses his smoke powers to grab Luffy. Things look bad, until Dragon shows up. Yes, Luffy's dad. Talk about a family reunion. A massive gust of wind sends Smoker flying, and the Straw Hats escape back to the Merry. Finally, they reach the entrance to the Grand Line. Sanji brings out a barrel, and each Straw Hat puts a foot on it, declaring their dreams. It's a classic One Piece moment. Then, they smash the barrel and sail off into the Grand Line, ready for whatever crazy adventures await them. And trust me, there are a lot of crazy adventures. Okay, so they're heading into the Grand Line, and Nami's navigating them up Reverse Mountain. Picture 4 ocean currents converging into one giant uphill stream. It's like a water roller coaster, but without the safety bars. And then, wham, a giant whale. Luffy, in a rare moment of foresight, fires a cannon to avoid a head-on collision, but RIP figurehead. Luffy's not happy, so naturally, he punches the whale in the eye, because that's how you solve problems, right? Quick aside, whales are huge, punching them is generally not recommended. The whale, understandably upset, swallows the Going Merry whole. Luffy manages to grab onto a tooth and climb onto its back, like some kind of whale rodeo. He finds a hatch and decides to go inside, which is where things get really weird. Inside the whale, Luffy bumps into 2 oddly dressed people and ends up in the whale's stomach. Talk about an awkward encounter. Turns out, there's an old guy living in the whale named Crocus, and the 2 weirdos were planning to, well, let's just say they weren't planning on having a friendly chat with the whale. Luffy, being Luffy, isn't about to let that happen. He takes care of the troublemakers, and Crocus leads the Straw Hats out through a canal in the whale. It's like a whale water slide. They learn the whale's name is Laboon, and he's been waiting for his pirate friends to come back for over 50 years. He keeps banging his head against the red line, which is not great for his health. Luffy, feeling for the lonely whale, decides to give him a fight to cheer him up. He rams the Going Merry's mast into Laboon's scar, and they have a brief but intense battle. Then, Luffy promises Laboon he'll come back after he's sailed the Grand Line. It's a pinky promise, but on a whale scale. Luffy even draws his Jolly Roger on Laboon's forehead, so he doesn't forget. Then they realize their compass is broken. Whoops, Crocus explains, they need a log pose to navigate the Grand Line. Luckily, Luffy happened to find one earlier, but Sanji accidentally breaks it during a little disagreement. Thankfully, Crocus has a spare. Oh, and the two weirdos from inside the whale, they need a ride to Whiskey Peak. It just so happens that's on the Straw Hats route, so they agree to give them a lift. With a promise to return to Laboon, they set sail again, ready for whatever the Grand Line throws at them. And let me tell you, it throws a lot. So, they arrive at Whiskey Peak, and it's party time. The townspeople are super welcoming, treating the Straw Hats like royalty. Luffy, naturally, takes full advantage of the all-you-can-eat buffet. He eats so much, he literally passes out. But when he wakes up, things have taken a dark turn. The town is a mess, and everyone's been beaten up. And apparently, Zoro's the one who did it. Luffy, understandably confused, and a little bit ticked off, confronts Zoro. They immediately start fighting. It's Straw Hat versus Straw Hat. They're so focused on beating each other up, that they completely ignore two other people who are trying to, well, it's not entirely clear what they were trying to do, but Luffy and Zoro accidentally take them out anyway. Talk about collateral damage. Nami finally steps in, breaking up the brawl, and explaining what happened. Turns out, the friendly townspeople were actually bounty hunters in disguise, and Zoro was just defending himself. Also, one of the weirdos from inside the whale, Miss Wednesday, is actually Princess Vivi of Alabasta. Plot twist, Vivi explains that she's infiltrated a criminal organization called Baroque Works, led by one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Crocodile. They're trying to take over her kingdom. Luffy, being the hero he is, decides to help her out. They agree to take Vivi and her pet duck, Karoo, to Alabasta. Igaram, Vivi's retainer, stays behind to cause a distraction, but things go south pretty quickly. Igaram's ship explodes, and Miss All Sunday, Crocodile's partner and the vice president of Baroque Works, shows up. She's just chilling on the Going Merry sails, like it's no big deal. She gives them a warning, and even offers them a different route, to Alabasta, but Luffy, being stubborn as ever, refuses. So, after the Whiskey Peak shenanigans, the Straw Hats, now with a princess and a duck in tow, set sail for their next destination, Little Garden, because apparently, things weren't weird enough already. So, the Straw Hats land on Little Garden, and it's like stepping back in time. Dinosaurs roam free, it's a prehistoric paradise. Luffy, naturally, is ecstatic. He's basically in a real-life Jurassic Park. He, Vivi, and Karoo go exploring, and meet a giant named Dory. Dory explains that he's in the middle of a century-long duel with another giant named Brogy. It's a matter of honor. You know, they have a big fight whenever the island's volcano erupts. Luffy watches one of these epic clashes, and it's giant-sized. Things get weird when a barrel of sake explodes. Everyone thinks the Straw Hats sabotaged it, which they definitely didn't. Luffy ends up fighting Dory, which is a bit of a mismatch, but Luffy manages to knock him down. Then they realize someone else is messing with them. Dory ends up losing his fight to Brogy because someone tampered with it. Luffy is furious. He finds out Miss Valentine from Baroque Works are behind it. They even captured Karoo. Luffy gets hit with an explosion, and things are looking grim, but Luffy and the others aren't down for the count. They get back up and find their friends being turned into wax statues by Mr. 3. It's like a really creepy art exhibit. Luffy fights Mr. Kree, and with some help from Usopp, they manage to free everyone. After all that chaos, they find out Dory's actually okay, just knocked out. Sanji then shows up with some good news. He tricked Crocodile into thinking they were dead, using a Den Den Mushi and some impressive acting, and he's also got an eternal pose to Alabasta. Problem solved. The giants, grateful for their help, give the Straw Hats a parting gift. They help them get past a giant goldfish, because you know why not. It's just another day in the Grand Line. Nami's suddenly hit with a nasty fever, so the Straw Hats have to make a detour. They're looking for a doctor, but they run into Wapol, who's basically a walking, talking, metal-eating. They refuse. Luffy punches him off the ship naturally, and they head to Drum Island. Drum Island is a snowy, mountainous place, famous for its medicine. The locals aren't exactly welcoming, but Vivi manages to smooth things over. They hear about Dr. Kurahat, the only doctor left on the island, who lives in a castle on top of a mountain. So, Luffy and Sanji decide to carry Nami up there. Talk about a workout. On the way, they encounter some man-eating rabbits called Lepon. Sanji fights them off while Luffy focuses on not dropping Nami. Then, an avalanche happens, and things get even more chaotic. Sanji gets knocked out, and Luffy has to carry both Nami and Sanji. He even ends up saving a Lapon. Wapol shows up again, still salty about getting punched off the ship. He attacks Luffy, who can't fight back without risking Nami's safety. But then, the Lepo Luffy saved earlier shows up with a whole bunch of his rabbit buddies, and they repay the favor, saving Luffy from Wapo. Luffy finally makes it to the top and meets Chopper, a reindeer with a blue nose who can transform into a human. Chopper takes them to Dr. Kuroha, a very energetic old lady. Luffy and Sanji wake up and immediately try to cook and eat Chopper, which doesn't go over well. Chopper transforms into his giant form and squashes them. Luffy is impressed and asks Dr. Kuroha to join his crew, but she declines. Then, Wapol crashes the party and starts arguing with Dr. Kuroha. Luffy, tired of his nonsense, punches him again. Wapol uses his devil fruit powers to turn into a house with cannons and fuses his goons into one big monstrosity called Chess Marimo. He even tries to destroy Dr. Haralook's flag, which is super important to Chopper. Luffy protects it. Luffy fights Wapol, while Chopper takes on Chess Marimo. Luffy gets distracted by Chopper's transformations, and Wapol escapes into the castle. But not for long. Luffy catches up, kicks Wapol, who's now skinny again, and sends him flying. After all that, Chopper decides to join Luffy's crew, and Dr. Kuroha gives him her blessing. As they leave, Dr. Kuroha sets off Haralook's final experiment. Pink snow falls on the island. It's a touching farewell. The Straw Hats, now with Chopper as their newest member, finally set sail for Alabasta. They arrive at Nanohana, and Luffy immediately runs off to find food. He accidentally crashes through a restaurant and several houses, knocking over Smoker and his brother, Ace. Luffy freaks out and runs away from Smoker, but Ace intervenes and saves him. Back on the Going Merry, Luffy explains to everyone that he just met his brother. Then Ace shows up and asks Luffy to join the Whitebeard pirates. Luffy refuses, saying he's going to be the Pirate King, even if he has to fight Whitebeard himself. They part ways on good terms, and Ace even helps them out by destroying some Baroque Works ships. They sail across the Sandora River and head to Yuba, where Vivi hopes to talk to the rebel leader, Koza. Along the way, Luffy befriends 100 Kung Fu Dugongs. He can't take them all with him, but it's a touching moment. They also pass through the ruined town of Iromalu, learning more about Alabasta's problems. They finally reach Yuba, but it's deserted except for an old man named Toto, an old friend of Vivi's. He tells them the rebels have moved due to the drought. Luffy helps Tatu dig for water, and they actually find some the next day. Luffy drops a bombshell. He quits. Everyone's confused, but he explains that stopping the rebels won't stop Crocodile. They have to defeat him directly. He tells Vivi that her desire to save everyone is naive, and that people die. This leads to an argument, but Luffy makes a powerful point. If Vivi's willing to risk her own life, why not theirs, since they're her friends? This brings Vivi to tears. Finally, Luffy asks her where they can find Crocodile. It's time to take down a warlord. Vivi tells them Crocodile's hiding out in Rainbase, so they head there, officer agents or not. Luffy and Usopp go looking for water, and stumble upon Smoker and Tashigi. Another chaotic chase scene. They manage to escape and find their way into Crocodile's casino. Rain dinners. Inside, they realize they forgot Vivi, so they don't know what Crocodile looks like. And of course Smoker shows up again. While running around, they fall through a trap door and land in a seastone cage. Is talk about bad luck. Then Crocodile himself shows up. He reveals his master plan, using his Sand fruit powers, Suna no Mi, to mock them. He even sets up a twisted game for Vivi. She has to choose between saving them from a flooding room or getting to Alubarna to stop the war. He reveals he's the one behind the sandstorms in Yuba, which really ticks Luffy off. Luffy tells Vivi to get the key, which has been eaten by a banana wani, a banana crocodile hybrid. Things look bleak, but then Sanji calls on a Den Mushi. He and Chopper are still free. They manage to get Mr. 3 to retrieve the key from the banana wani, and they use his wax powers to free everyone from the cage, just as the room floods. They even grab Smoker on their way out. They find Chopper, who's brought Hasami, a giant crab, to take them to Alubarna. But then Crocodile snags Vivi. Luffy saves her just in time, and tells the others to go ahead, while he takes on Crocodile himself. Crocodile gives him a 3-minute head start, before he heads to Alubarna. Luffy throws everything he's got at Crocodile, but nothing works. Crocodile dehydrates Luffy's arm, but Luffy uses the water from Yuba to recover. He tells Crocodile he'll never destroy Yuba. Then the 3 minutes are up. Crocodile creates a massive sandstorm aimed at Yuba. Luffy tries to stop him, but gets impaled and left for dead in the sand. But then Miss All Sunday pulls him out. She leaves him with Pell, the hero of Alabasta. Pell, using his falcon fruit, flies Luffy back to Alubarna, just in time to save Vivi from Crocodile, who's literally dropping her from the palace walls. Luffy heads back up to fight Crocodile again. He remembers that water messes with Crocodile's sand powers, so he brings a giant barrel of water, but that gets tricky, so he decides to drink all the water and become Mizu Luffy, Water Luffy. It's a weird but effective tactic that really annoys Crocodile. Even with the water advantage, Crocodile uses his full power, and Luffy gets dehydrated again, almost dying. Luckily, some stray water bubbles revive him. Tashigi tells him Crocodile is heading to the royal tomb, so Luffy follows. His old wounds reopen, and he briefly passes out, but he pushes on. He finds Crocodile in the collapsing tomb. This time, Luffy uses his own blood to counter Crocodile's sand powers. It's a brutal fight. Crocodile uses his poison hook, but Luffy doesn't give up. He kicks Crocodile into the air, and then takes a direct hit from one of his powerful attacks, but he gets back up and unleashes a flurry of punches, breaking through Crocodile's sand defenses and sending him crashing through bedrock. Crocodile is finally defeated. King Cobra thanks Luffy for everything. Miss All Sunday gives them the antidote for Crocodile's poison, and Luffy, using the last of his strength, carries the king and Miss All Sunday out of the ruins. Then he collapses and the king carries him back to the crew. After 3 days of being treated like royalty secretly, of course, the Straw Hats prepare to leave before the Marines catch them. They offer Vivi a spot on the crew, giving her until noon the next day to decide. The next day they set sail with Mr. 2 and his crew, who help them escape a marine blockade. Mr. 2 makes a tearful sacrifice to let them get away. They meet Vivi at the rendezvous point, but she decides to stay in Alabasta to fulfill her duties as princess. She asks them if she can join them again. If they ever meet, they can't answer out loud because of the Marines, so they show her their matching X-shaped wristbands, a silent promise of friendship. The Straw Hats sail away, feeling sad about leaving Vivi, but then surprise! Nico Robin Miss All Sunday is stowed away on the Going Merry. She demands Luffy take responsibility for saving her and let her join the crew, and Luffy, without hesitation, says yes, much to everyone's surprise. Soon after leaving Alabasta, a giant ship falls from the sky. Nico Robin finds a map on it that points to Skypiea, a sky island. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji dive down to explore the sunken ship using Usopp's special diving suits. They find some clues, but then the ship gets filled with air, and they encounter some intruders. After dealing with them, they meet Masira, a monkey-like guy who's also looking for something on the ship. They clash, and Luffy barely escapes with Zoro and Sanji, just as a giant turtle eats the ship. They also see huge shadows of even bigger creatures. They find an eternal pose to Jaya, and head there to find out how to get to Skypiea. They land in Loguetown, a lawless pirate haven. Luffy, Zoro, and Nami go into town, and promise Nami they won't fight. They end up in a bar and have a brief argument with another pirate. Then, they meet Bellamy and his crew, who mock their dream of going to a sky island. Bellamy's crew even beats up Luffy and Zoro, but they refuse to fight back. A pirate they argued with earlier encourages them and tells them to never give up on their dreams, but Luffy and Zoro sense something fishy about him. Back on the Going Merry, they learn that Robin found someone named Mont Blanc Cricket, who might know about Skypiea. They head to the other side of Jaya, and meet Cricket, who has decompression sickness. After helping him, they become friends with him and his protégés, Masira and Shoju, Masira's brother. Cricket tells them about his ancestor and his dream, and they convince him to help them get to Skypiea. They need a south bird to find the knock-up stream, the only way to get to the Sky Island. They split up to search for the bird, and Robin manages to catch one. When they return to Cricket's house, they find he and his protégés have been beaten and robbed by Bellamy and his crew. Luffy, furious, goes to Loguetown to get their gold back. He confronts Bellamy, who shows off his spring fruit powers, but Luffy defeats him with a single punch, retrieving the gold. The next morning, they return the gold to Cricket, and see the Going Merry has been modified for the sky journey. With the Southbird and Masira and Shoju escorting them, they head to where the knock-up stream appears. While waiting, they encounter the pirate Luffy argued with in the bar, who reveals Luffy and Zoro's new bounties, and tries to capture them. But then, the knock-up stream erupts, launching the Going Merry into the sky, and sending them on their way to Skypiea, inadvertently escaping the bounty hunter. After launching into the sky on the knock-up stream, the Straw Hats find themselves floating on clouds. Usopp decides to take a cloud swim and almost falls to the blue sea below, but Robin uses her devil fruit powers to save him. A giant balloon octopus appears, but Zoro quickly takes care of it. Then, a masked gorilla warrior attacks Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, but Gan Fall, the Knight of the Sky, arrives on his bird horse Pierre, and saves them. He gives them a whistle for emergencies. They find a cloud waterfall and discover they can walk on some of the clouds. They find Heaven's Gate, where they're asked to pay 1 billion extols, the local currency, to enter Skypiea. They only have belly, their usual currency, but the gatekeeper lets them through anyway. Then their ship, the Going Merry, gets taken by Speedy Shrimp and carried to Angel Island. Luffy immediately starts exploring and meets Konis and her father, Pagaya. Luffy tries riding Pagaya's Waver, a cloud-powered vehicle, and crashes. Nami tries it, and is much better. They go to Konis's house, where she explains how Dial's energy sources work. Then they realize Nami's gone to Upper Yard, a forbidden area ruled by God Enel. The White Berets, Skypiea's law enforcement, show up and try to find them for illegal entry. When Nami gets angry and hits their leader, McKinley, they change the punishment to execution by cloud drifting. Luffy fights the White Berets, and Zoro and Sanji help him finish them off. McKinley says they'll be judged by God's priests. Konis and Pagaya tell them their crewmates have been taken to the sacrificial altar on Upper Yard. Konis gives Luffy, Usopp, and Sanji her small boat, the Karasumaru, so they can go rescue them. She then confesses that she was the one who called the Speedy Shrimp because she was afraid of being punished. Enel then attacks the port with a massive thunderbolt, but Luffy saves Konis and Ganfall takes her to safety while Luffy, Usopp, and Sanji head to Upper Yard. They face several obstacles on Upper Yard, including swinging blades and a giant sky lamprey eel. They reach 4 gateways leading to different ordeals, and choose the ordeal of balls. They end up surrounded by giant cloud balls, some of which contain snakes and explosives. They encounter Satori, one of Enel's priests, who uses surprise balls and impact dials to attack them. After a tough fight, Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp defeat Satori. They then sail through a field of skulls and meet Wiper, a Shandia gorilla, who warns them to stay out of his way. They arrive at the sacrificial altar and reunite with their crew. They discover the lost city of gold is on Upper Yard, and decide to search for it. The next morning, they split into 2 teams to explore. Luffy, Zoro, Chopper, and Robin form the explore team. They immediately encounter a giant snake, named Nola. They scatter, and Luffy gets separated. He runs into Wiper again, and they fight. Wiper uses his burn bazooka, but Luffy manages to hold his own. They both take heavy damage, and then Luffy gets eaten by Nola. Inside Nola's stomach, Luffy finds some treasure. He tries to break out, causing Nola to rampage. Nami, Ganfall, Pierre, and Ayasa also get eaten by Nola, and find Luffy inside. They realize they're in the snake's stomach. They escape through Nola's mouth, but Luffy and Ayasa fall back in, only to be rescued by Pierre. Nola is then knocked out by Enel's lightning. They climb out, and find themselves in Shindora, the city of gold, but they also find Zoro, Chopper, Robin, Ganfall, and Wiper unconscious near a giant hole. Robin tells Luffy that Enel is planning to destroy Skypiea, and has taken Nami somewhere. She thinks he's going to the Golden Bell first, so Ayasa guides Luffy there. Asa guides Luffy to Enel, who's with Nami on the Arc Maxim. Luffy climbs onto the ship and gets hit by a massive thunderbolt, but it doesn't affect him because he's rubber. Enel is shocked, and Luffy punches him in the stomach, bypassing his Logia powers. Enel uses his mantra Observation Haki to dodge Luffy's next attacks and hits him with his staff, which he can reshape into a trident. Luffy struggles to avoid being stabbed. He manages to kick Enel, but Enel grabs him and slams him into the floor, activating the Arc Maxim and creating a giant thundercloud called Deathpea to destroy Skypiea. Luffy tries to anticipate Enel's moves by shutting off his mind and relying on reflexes, but that doesn't work for attacking. He then punches the walls of Enel's throne room, making the punches ricochet and hit Enel unpredictably. He then pummels Enel directly. Enel creates a giant golden ball around Luffy's arm and kicks it off the ship. Luffy almost falls, but Enel knocks him down with his staff, and Pierre try to save him, but Enel attacks them with lightning. They all fall into a chasm. Luffy climbs out and follows the Arc Maxim to Giant Jack, a giant beanstalk. Robin is there and tells him the golden bell is at the top. Luffy runs up the beanstalk, still stuck with the golden ball on his arm. Enel breaks off the top of the beanstalk, sending Luffy falling, but Luffy grabs back on. Nami arrives on her waiver and tells him Usopp and Sanji are safe, but Luffy insists on defeating Enel and ringing the bell for cricket. Enel keeps attacking Luffy with lightning. Luffy writes a message on a giant leaf to tell people to cut down Giant Jack, so it falls towards the Maxim. Nami decides to stay with Luffy and pilot the waiver. Zoro, Nola, and Wiper successfully tip Giant Jack westward. Nami drives the waiver up the falling beanstalk, with Luffy holding on. Enel creates an even bigger thundercloud called Rago to destroy all of Skypiea. Luffy jumps into the Rago and throws the golden ball around, dispersing the electricity and saving Skypiea. Luffy reaches the Maxim and the golden bell. He then uses the golden ball to smash Enel into the golden bell, ringing it and defeating him. Luffy Enel the Maxim and the bell fall, but Luffy lands on a cloud with Nami. They jump back down to Upper Yard and find the priest's storehouse, taking all the food. They reunite with their crew and have a party with the Skypeans and Shandia. After the party, Luffy wakes everyone up to steal some of the city's treasure. They take treasure from inside Nola's stomach. Robin returns with some Skypeans, who actually want to give them even more treasure, but the Straw Hats run away with what they've already got. They say goodbye to Konis and Pagaya, and then use a balloon octopus to descend safely to the Blue Sea. After returning from Skypiea, the Straw Hats encounter a giant wave caused by sea monkeys. They discuss using their Skypiea treasure to fix the Going Merry and find a shipwright. They encounter the sea monkeys again, and a mysterious, sailless crewless ship before reaching Long Land, where everything is long. Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper explore the island and meet Tunjit, an old man stuck on stilts for 10 years. They help him reunite with his horse, Shelly. Then Shelly gets shot by Foxy, a nearby pirate. Foxy challenges Luffy to a Davy backfight, a series of 3 games where crew members are at stake. Luffy accepts, much to his crew's dismay. The Foxy pirates set up a festival for the games. The first game is the donut race, where Foxy uses his Noro no Mi, slow fruit powers to cheat and win Chopper. The second game is Groggy Ring, which the Straw Hats win, getting Chopper back. The third game is Combat, and Luffy, wearing an afro and boxing gear, faces Foxy on his ship, the sexy Foxy. Foxy uses all sorts of tricks and his devil fruit powers, but Luffy perseveres. He uses a mirror shard to reflect Foxy's powers back at him, slowing him down, and then delivers the final blow, winning the Davy backfight. Luffy gets to choose a crew member from Foxy's crew, but instead chooses their flag. He then redesigns it with a terrible drawing and gives it back. Foxy vows revenge. The Straw Hats give the old Foxy pirate's flag to Tunjit to bandage Shelly. Then they meet Admiral Aokiji, who's just sleeping next to Tunjit's house. Aokiji is surprisingly friendly, even mentioning that he knows Luffy's grandfather. He uses his no Mi ice fruit powers to help Tunjit reunite with his nomad clan. But when things get tense between Aokiji and Robin, Luffy and his crew fight him. They're completely outmatched and easily defeated. Aokiji freezes Luffy, but lets them go with a warning about Robin. 7 days after meeting Aokiji, the Straw Hats arrive at Water 7, known for its amazing shipwrights. They chase a giant frog named Yokozuna, but have to turn back because of the sea train. They meet Kokroro and Chimney, who tell them to find Iceberg, the mayor of Water 7, and head of the Galley La Company. Kokroro gives them a map and a letter of recommendation. They dock at a small peninsula and marvel at the city's architecture. Nami makes Luffy and Usopp go with her to meet Iceberg. They exchange their Skypiea gold for 300 million belly and take Yagara Bull's sea cows to the shipyard. They meet Koku, a carpenter, who tells them Iceberg is the mayor. Koku goes to inspect the Going Merry. They meet Iceberg, who's surprisingly irresponsible. His secretary, Khalifa, attacks them when they point this out. Golden Iceberg offers them a tour of the shipyard. The Frankie family steals their money, but Polly gets it back, only for Rob Lucci to force Polly to return it to the Straw Hats. Luffy is amazed by Doc 1 and tries to recruit Iceberg, but fails. Koku returns and delivers the bad news. The Going Merry is beyond repair. Luffy refuses to believe it, but the carpenters insist. Then they realize their suitcases are empty again. They hear that Usopp was seen with the Frankie family, so Luffy goes to find him. Luffy falls into a canal, but is rescued by Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper. They find a badly beaten Usopp and head to the Frankie house for revenge. They trash the place, even though they find out Frankie is out spending their money. Luffy then announces they're getting a new ship. They take Usopp back to the Merry. When he wakes up, Luffy tells him about the new ship. Usopp refuses to accept it and challenges Luffy to a duel for the Merry. The duel is set for 10 p.m. At the appointed time, Luffy and Usopp face off. Usopp uses various long-range attacks and even a gas explosion, injuring Luffy. Luffy manages to punch Usopp, but Usopp counters with an impact dial, which he redirects at Luffy. However, the recoil leaves Usopp open and Luffy defeats him. Luffy tells Usopp he can do whatever he wants with the Merry as he walks away, heartbroken. The Straw Hats, minus Robin, stay at an inn. Nami tells Luffy that Iceberg has been shot. They go to Dock 1 and find Frankie, who attacks Luffy and Nami for attacking his family. Frankie reveals he's a cyborg. Polly, Koku, Lucci, and other Galley-La workers interrupt the fight. Polly says, "The Straw Hats are suspects in the attack on Iceberg," saying Robin was seen with the attackers. Luffy refuses to believe it. The Galley-La workers attack Luffy, but Frankie creates chaos, allowing Luffy and Nami to escape. Luffy and Nami reach Galley-La headquarters and find Iceberg, who demands they bring him Robin. Luffy can't, and Iceberg shoots at him. They escape and reunite with Zoro. Chopper tells them Robin said she framed them and is leaving forever. Zoro deduces Robin will likely try to kill Iceberg that night, so Luffy decides to confront her. That night, they see an explosion at headquarters. Luffy goes inside and finds Polly tied up with 2 masked men. He recognizes them as enemies and demands Robin back. They subdue Luffy and leave him and Polly tied up. They escape their bindings and reach Iceberg's room, finding Robin with Lucy, Kaku, Califa, and Blano, who are revealed to be CP9 agents. Lucy attacks Polly, and Luffy intervenes. Lucy uses Rokushiki techniques to overpower Luffy. Robin says she's pursuing a goal she can't achieve with them. Lucy says the mansion will burn down, but stays to prevent their escape. Luffy tries to reach Robin, but Luffy throws him aside as she leaves. Luffy reveals his devil fruit, the Neko Neko no Mi, model leopard, and uses a powerful attack that causes the building to collapse. He then pierces Luffy with a claw-enhanced Shigen and throws him out of the building. Luffy gets stuck between two buildings. Nami finds him and tells him Robin is with the world government to save their lives. Luffy pushes the buildings apart and escapes with Nami just before Aqua Laguna. A giant tidal wave hits the city. They're eventually caught by the wave but rescued by Polly. Luffy learns Sanji stowed away on the sea train, taking Robin to Enies Lobby. He asks Polly for a ship, but Polly refuses until the next morning because of Aqua Laguna. Luffy decides to take a ship by force. Milkuro then offers to take them on a secret sea train, the Rocket Man. Iceberg has already prepared the Rocket Man. The Frankie family asks to join them to save Frankie, who was also taken. Luffy agrees. The Rocket Man sets off, and they discover Polly and the Galley La workers have also stowed away. Luffy makes a pact with them and the Frankie family to rescue Robin and Frankie. The Rocket Man faces a massive wave. Luffy and Zoro combine their attacks to create a hole for the train to pass through. They equip themselves for battle. They find detached puffing tom cars, and Luffy jumps in to look for Sanji. He's attacked by world government agents. He tells Zoro to cut the cars. They encounter Marine Captain T-Bone, who Zoro quickly defeats. They then find Yokozuna blocking the train tracks. Luffy pulls him on board, and Kokoro convinces him to help. The Rocket Man then heads towards Enies Lobby. The Frankie family brings the Rocket Man back to the tracks, with Sanji and Usopp disguised as Soga King on board. Iceberg outlines a plan. The Straw Hats stay on the Rocket Man, while the Galley La workers and Frankie family clear a path to Enies Lobby. Luffy ignores the plan, and launches himself toward Enies Lobby, using Gomu Gomu no Rocket, bypassing the main gate and attacking any Marines in his way. He fights his way to the main island gate, and is surrounded by thousands of Marines. He takes out hundreds of them in seconds. He reaches the courthouse roof, where Blomo confronts him. Luffy attacks Blomo, injuring him even through his Iron Body technique. Luffy keeps up with Blomo's Soro Shave technique, and smashes him into the floor. Luffy dodges Blomo's Rankyaku, Storm Leg attack and activates Gear 2, increasing his blood flow and speed. He overwhelms Blomo, who retreats through an air door. Luffy uses Gomu Gomu no Jet Bazooka, breaking through Blomo's Tekai, and defeating him. Luffy is exhausted from using Gear 2. He shouts to Robin at the Tower of Justice that he's coming for her. Luffy eats some meat to recover, and Frankie blasts himself and Robin out of the tower, but they get stuck on a fence. Robin tells Luffy she wants to die, and never wants to see him again. Spandam and CP9 appear. The rest of the Straw Hats arrive. Luffy tells Robin she can choose to die, but he wants her to do it with them. Robin says the world is against her. Spandam boasts about the world government's power. Luffy tells Sogeking to shoot down the world government flag, declaring war. He tells Robin to say she wants to live, and she tearfully does. The drawbridge to the Tower of Justice is lowered, but then hit by a mortar strike. Kokoro calls Nami, and says she's piloting the Rocket Man to the tower. Luffy grabs his crew, and jumps onto the Rocket Man as it leaps across the gap. The Rocket Man crashes into the tower. They're confronted by CP9 agent Fukuro, who says Spandam and Lucci are taking Robin to the gates of justice. Robin is handcuffed with Seastone cuffs. Each CP9 agent has a key, only one of which unlocks the cuffs. Luffy tries to get Fukuro's key, but Zoro stops him. The Straw Hats and Frankie tell Luffy to go after Lucci and Robin, while they fight the other CP9 agents. Luffy reaches the room where Robin was, but it's empty. He runs towards the gates of justice, but finds only water separating him from them. He tries to row a boat, but the currents destroy it. Chimney and Gonbi arrive, and tell him about an underground passage. They find a locked steel door. Luffy uses Gear 3, inflating his bones, and becoming giant, to break through the door, then shrinks back to normal size. He finds Lucci in a storeroom in a tower, supporting the Bridge of Hesitation. Luffy tries to chase Robin, but Lucci blocks him. They clash, causing lots of damage. Luffy briefly overpowers Lucci, but Lucci quickly recovers. Frankie arrives with 2 CP9 keys, and offers to help Luffy, but Luffy tells him to save Robin. Lucci overpowers Luffy to attack Frankie, but Luffy activates Gear 2, and overwhelms Lucci, long enough for Frankie to escape. Lucci uses a Rankyaku attack, to create a hole in the wall, flooding the underground passage. He says Luffy can't save his crewmates, and defeat him. The room fills with water, and Luffy follows Lucci to a higher room. Lucci says Luffy can go help his friends, but Luffy says Lucci will kill them all if he leaves. Lucci injures Luffy with advanced Rokushiki techniques. Luffy uses Gear 3, inflating his right arm to giant size, and launching Lucci out of the tower. He then inflates his torso and leg, causing even more destruction. Lucci transforms into his full leopard form, and attacks Luffy. Luffy deflates, becoming small again due to Gear 3's side effects, and hides from Lucci. Lucci finds Luffy and attacks him, but Lucci is weakened from Luffy's earlier attacks, giving Luffy time to return to normal size. Luffy activates Gear 2 again, even though it's hurting him. He overwhelms Lucci, but Lucci uses Rokugan, a powerful Rokushiki technique, that damages Luffy internally. The walls start to crumble. Luffy sees his crewmates encouraging him. Lucci hits him with another Rokugan, and Luffy collapses. Usopp without his Sogeking mask calls out to Luffy, telling him to get back up. Luffy gets up and exchanges blows with Lucci. Lucci uses another Rokugan, but Luffy quickly gets up again, and uses Gomu, no Jet Gatling, defeating Lucci. Luffy shouts to Robin that they're going back together but then collapses from his injuries. Gets Robin to push Luffy off the tower, and the Going Merry suddenly appears, catching him. Luffy is rescued by Kokoro, and brought onto the Merry. Robin thanks everyone. The Marines prepare to fire, but Sanji closes the gates of justice, creating whirlpools that throw off their aim. Zoro and Sanji use Luffy's body to deflect cannonballs back at the Marines. Frankie uses coup de vent to blast the Merry away from Enies Lobby. They reach safety. Usopp puts his Sogeking mask back on, and pretends Usopp went off on another boat. They meet Iceberg on a Galila ship. The Merry's bell almost breaks off. Luffy begs Iceberg to help the Merry, but Iceberg says it's beyond repair. Luffy accepts this. After everyone evacuates the Merry, Luffy sets it on fire. The Merry speaks to them, apologizing for not being able to carry them further. Luffy cries and apologizes to the Merry. The Merry says it was happy to have gone this far, and thanks them for taking care of it as it sinks into the sea. 2 days after Enies Lobby, everyone is relaxing in water. Frankie decides to build a new ship from atom wood. This Admiral Garp suddenly breaks into Iceberg's mansion and punches Luffy awake. Luffy reveals Garp is his grandfather and tells stories of his harsh childhood training. Garp tells Luffy about the 4 emperors, including Shanks. He then asks Luffy about meeting his father in Loguetown, revealing his name, Dragon, the revolutionary, considered the world's worst criminal by the world government. Luffy is shocked, as is his crew. Robin explains why Dragon is infamous. Garp says it was supposed to be a secret. A few days later, Chimney Gonbi, Mozu and Kiwi tell them their new ship is finished. Zambai and the Frankie family arrive, and reveal the Straw Hats' new bounties, as well as Frankie's. They beg the Straw Hats to let Frankie join. They all go to Scrap Island to see the new ship. Iceberg unveils the Thousand Sunny. Luffy asks where Frankie is. Iceberg says Luffy needs to use force to recruit him. With the Frankie family's help, Luffy gets Frankie's underwear to use as leverage. Frankie simply poses naked, saying, "I'm still a man naked." Sanji and Zoro arrive, saying Garp is attacking from the opposite shore. Luffy throws Frankie's briefs back and tells him to join. Frankie agrees, saying he wants to see his dream ship reach the end of the world. Garp attacks the Straw Hats and the Thousand Sunny with iron balls. Usopp tries to rejoin, but is ignored until he apologizes. He finally does, tearfully admitting he wants to come back. Luffy accepts him. Frankie names the ship the Thousand Sunny after other ridiculous suggestions from Luffy. They escape Garp's attack using the Sunny's coup de burst. The Straw Hats, now with Frankie, Usopp and Robin back, set sail for their next adventure. After sailing on the Thousand Sunny, the Straw Hats encounter a ghost ship and meet Brook, a skeleton. Luffy immediately asks him to join his crew, and Brook accepts. Brook explains he can't officially join because his shadow was stolen. Luffy promises to get it back, which makes Brook happy. A ghost appears, along with the gates of Thriller Bark, a strange island. Brook heads towards the island. Luffy, Frankie, and Robin decide to go to Thriller Bark to get Brook and explore. They realize Nami, Usopp, and Chopper are missing. Before they can go, they're stopped by something invisible, which turns out to be a giant spiderweb that catches the Sunny. They descend to the island and meet Cerberus, a 3-headed dog, which Luffy wants to eat. They encounter ghosts. They then fight some zombies and learn from them that they attacked Nami, Usopp, and Chopper. They shove the zombies back into their graves. They meet Spoil, a zombie old man who asks them to defeat Gecko Moria, a warlord who stole his and others' shadows. Robin explains Moria's past. Luffy agrees to help. They discover Thriller Bark is actually a giant ship and enter Moria's mansion. Inside, they fight more zombies. Sanji is missing. They take Buachuk, the zombie leader, as a hostage to guide them. The zombies warn them about Moria's wrath, but Luffy says he'll kick Moria's ass. Zoro also goes missing. Luffy finds a suit of armor and puts it on. They find an arena where Frankie is fighting a general zombie. They're trapped by Buachuk and forced to fight a large group of general zombies. Luffy encounters a general zombie with 3 swords. Like Zoro, before he can get answers, he's attacked by spider mice zombies and sealed in a coffin, which is sent to the main mast of Thriller Bark. Luffy is brought before Gecko Moria and has his shadow stolen using Moria's Kage no Mi Shadow fruit powers. Luffy falls into a coma. Moria puts Luffy's shadow into Oars, the 900th zombie. Luffy is then taken back to the Thousand Sunny by the spider mice. Wakes up Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro in the Thousand Sunny's kitchen. They learn what happened while they were unconscious and plan to get Nami and their shadows back. Frankie tells Luffy about Brook's connection to Laboon, further motivating Luffy to have Brook join his crew. They split into 2 teams, one to save Nami, the other Luffy's to defeat Moria. Luffy's team purifies zombies with salt. They're attacked by Piranha's ghosts, but are saved by the others. Oars, the zombie with Luffy's shadow, crashes into their part of the building, separating some of the team. Luffy, Robin, and Chopper continue towards Moria. They're stopped by by Hogback and Sindri, but Robin and Chopper hold them off so Luffy can proceed. Luffy reaches Moria and attacks him, but Moria uses his shadow, Doppelman, to fight. Luffy manages to hit Moria directly by attacking him from unexpected angles, but can't land a clean hit. Oars returns and obeys Moria's orders to destroy the Straw Hats. Luffy chases Moria, who runs away. Moria tricks Luffy into chasing Doppelman, leaving Luffy lost in the forest. With dawn approaching, Luffy tries to find his way back. He meets the Thriller Bark Victims Association, led by Spoil, the Risky Bros. Flop, the Rolling Pirates tell him how to beat Moria by absorbing captured shadows to power up for 10 minutes. Luffy absorbs 100 shadows and becomes Nightmare Luffy, a large blue being. Nightmare Luffy arrives at Masked Mansion, where Oars and Moria are fighting the Straw Hats and Brook. He easily overpowers Oars, also hurting Moria. After using Gomu no Storm, his 10 minutes are up, but he's already inflicted heavy damage on Oars, causing him to fall onto the mansion. Oars gets back up. Luffy, his crew, and Brook launch a final combined attack. While the others restrict Oars' movements, Brook and Robin help Luffy reach the top of Thriller Bark. Luffy is thrown down towards Oars and uses Gear 3 to shatter his spine. Oars is finally defeated, but they still need Moria to return their shadows before dawn. Moria uses his Shadow's Asgard technique, becoming a giant monster. Despite his fatigue and injuries, Luffy prepares for one last fight. Luffy fights Moria with Gear 2 techniques, causing Moria to expel some shadows. With dawn almost breaking, Luffy uses a desperate move, Gomu no Gigant Jet Shell, stacking his gear transformations. As dawn begins to incinerate them, Luffy asks his shadow to return if it wants to be Pirate King. With a final Gigant Jet Shell, Luffy defeats Moria, who can no longer hold the stolen shadows. All the shadows return just in time. With Moria defeated and everyone's shadows returned, Luffy collapses from exhaustion. Bartholomew Kuma, another warlord, arrives. He witnessed Luffy's victory and is ordered by the world government to eliminate Luffy and everyone who saw him defeat Moria. A battle ensues between Kuma and the Straw Hats to protect Luffy. Zoro offers to trade his life for Luffy's. Impressed by Zoro's loyalty, Kuma uses his powers to extract all of Luffy's pain and transfer it to Zoro. After Kuma leaves and a day of rest passes, Luffy celebrates their victory. He hears Brook playing a familiar song on a piano, a song Shanks used to sing. Luffy talks to Brook and asks him to join his crew again. Brook declines, saying he still has things to do. Luffy reveals he knows about Brook's connection to Laboon, and that Laboon is alive. This makes Brook cry with joy. Brook plays a tone dial containing the Rumbar Pirates' last performance. Brook then asks Luffy if he can join his crew. Luffy casually agrees, finally getting his musician. After 2 days of recovering, they prepare to leave Thriller Bark for Fishman Island. Luffy introduces them to the concept of Weaver cards. Luffy takes out the Weaver card Ace gave him and sees it's burning and shrinking. He's told this means Ace's life is fading. Luffy dismisses it, saying Ace is just having his own adventure, and they sail away from Thriller Bark. After leaving Thriller Bark, the Straw Hats reach the Red Line. Luffy, Robin, and Brook try to go to Fishman Island in the shark-submerged E, but it can't go deep enough, and they're chased back by a sea bunny. Luffy defeats the sea bunny, which spits out Cammy, a mermaid, and Papin, a talking starfish. Cammy offers them takoyaki, but realizes her partner Hatchin has been kidnapped by the Macro Pirates and the Flying Fish Riders. Nami offers to rescue him, and Luffy agrees because of the takoyaki. They learn the Flying Fish Riders are led by Duval and are one of many kidnapping gangs. They reach the Flying Fish Riders base and find Hatchin caged. Luffy and his crew recognize him and are hesitant to help, but when Cammy and Papid are also captured, they decide to rescue them. Luffy frees Cammy and Papid. The Flying Fish Riders attack. Luffy hijacks a flying fish but is forced underwater. Sanji tells Luffy to knock out a charging flying fish. While Sanji takes down the rider, Brook puts more riders to sleep with his music. Luffy crashes into Duval's room and sees his face before he puts his mask on. Duval chases Luffy outside. Luffy knocks off Duval's mask, revealing his face looks exactly like Sanji's wanted poster. Duval has Sanji captured in a net and thrown into the sea, but Cammy saves him. Franky destroys the Flying Fish Riders base. Sanji then defeats Duval. Hatchin, Cammy, and Papid make takoyaki for them. Duval, now with a changed face thanks to Sanji, and his renamed Rosy Life Riders, thank them. Papage says they need a special coating for the Sunny to reach Fishman Island, which they can get at the Sabaody Archipelago. Hatchin warns them not to defy any world nobles, celestial dragons. Luffy, Chopper, and Brook go shopping with Cammy, Papadet, and Hatchin. They see a slave being shot by world nobles, Saint Shalria and Saint Roswald. Luffy is enraged, but Papadid warns him about the consequences of attacking a world noble. They're attacked by bounty hunters, whom they easily defeat. They go to Shaki's rip-off bar to find a coder. Shaki Yaku tells them about Silver's Rayleigh, who can coat their ship. She also mentions 9 other pirates with bounties over 100 million, including one higher than Luffy's. They go to Sabaody Park. Takani is kidnapped by hound pets. Luffy, Papadid, and Hatchin look for her in human shops, learning about the discrimination against fishmen and merfolk. The Rosy Life Riders take them to the human auctioning house where Kami is being sold. Luffy and his rider pick up Zoro on the way. They crash into the auction house as Kami is being sold. Luffy tries to reach her, but Hatchin holds him back. Then World Noble Saint Shallows shoots Hatchin. Luffy punches Shallows, knocking him unconscious. Luffy apologizes for disobeying Hatchin, but his crew joins him in attacking the guards and trying to free Kami. Silver's Rayleigh appears and uses Conqueror's Haki to knock out almost everyone, including the world nobles. He frees Kami and says he'll talk to Luffy later. Marines surround the auction house. Eustace Kid tells Luffy and Trafalgar Law that he and his crew will handle the Marines. The 3 supernovas then fight the Marines together before going their separate ways. The Straw Hats and their allies go with Rayleigh, parting ways with the Rosy Life Riders. Rayleigh reveals he was Gold D, Roger's first mate, and tells them the truth about Roger's final voyage and execution. Luffy stops Usopp from asking about the One Piece, not wanting spoilers. Rayleigh agrees to coat the Sunny for free, saying it will take 3 days. They receive a Vivre card to meet him then, and set out to survive the Marine onslaught. They are immediately confronted by a Pacifista, which they mistake for Kuma. The Pacifista attacks, and Luffy activates Gear 2. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji attack it simultaneously, but only knock it into a building. It gets back up and overwhelms Zoro, but the Straw Hats manage to take it down with Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Gigant rifle. They are then confronted by Sentamaro and another Pacifista, PX-1. Luffy tells the crew to split up and reunite at the Sunny in 3 days. Luffy runs with Robin and Chopper, but Sentamaro catches them and hurts Luffy with armament haki. Luffy sees Kizoro attacking Zoro, but Rayleigh intervenes. Luffy tells Usopp and Brook to take Zoro and run. His crewmates are overwhelmed by PX-4, while Luffy is slammed into the ground by Sentamaro. The real Kuma appears and transports Zoro away. Luffy yells at his crew to run. Kuma sends Brook, Usopp, and Sanji away. He repels an attack from Luffy, and then sends Frankie and Nami away. Finally, he sends Chopper and Robin away. Luffy breaks down, unable to save his crew, and Kuma tells him they won't meet again before sending Luffy away. Luffy lands on Amazon Lily. He tries to use Rayleigh's Vivre card to return to Sabaody, but collapses. He eats a body mushroom, which causes mushrooms to grow on his body. Marguerite, Sweet Pea, and a Philandra find him and take him to the village. They remove the mushrooms and wash him. Sweet Pea mistakes Luffy's crotch for a mushroom, revealing to the all-female population that he's a man. Luffy is imprisoned. He retrieves his hat. He escapes by destroying the roof of his cell. He realizes he needs Rayleigh's Vivre card from his trousers. He grabs Marguerite and climbs a cliff. Marguerite gives him the card and tells him about their empress, Boa Hancock, who's also a pirate. Marguerite helps Luffy remove the frills from his clothes and tells him Amazon Lily is in the calm belt. Luffy tries to build a raft, but it falls apart. Marguerite then tries to kill him. Luffy dodges Marguerite's armament, haki-imbued arrows. He escapes by climbing back up the mountain. He decides to find an important person to help him by going to a tall building. He falls through the roof of Hancock's palace and sees a mark on her back. Hancock's sisters, Boa Sandersonia and Boa Marigold, appear and say, Luffy must die. Hancock tries to use her Mero Mero, no me, love love fruit powers to turn him to stone, but it has no effect. Luffy jumps out of the palace and is captured by the Kuja. Luffy is put in an arena. Hancock refuses to believe his story. Marguerite, Sweet Pea, and a Philandra plead for him, but Hancock turns them to stone. She releases the Panther Bakura to attack Luffy, but he defeats it. The spectators laugh at Hancock's actions, and Luffy is unaffected by her charms. Hancock sends Sandersonia and Marigold, who transform into snakes, to kill Luffy. Luffy struggles against them. They try to destroy the statues of Marguerite's group. Luffy yells at them to stop, unintentionally using Conqueror's haki, knocking out many Kuja. Luffy activates Gear 2, overwhelming Sandersonia's observation haki and Marigold's armament haki. The sisters use their ultimate attacks, but Luffy defeats them with Gomu Gomu no Jet Gatling and ties their tails together. Sandersonia almost falls into a spiked pit, and Luffy covers the mark on her back. Hancock has the Kuja evacuate the arena. Hancock says she'll either restore Marguerite's group or give Luffy a way to leave. Luffy chooses the former. Hancock reveals the mark on her back is the hoof of the soaring dragon, signifying she was once a slave. She and her sisters were freed, and the Kuja believe the mark is a cursed Gorgon's eye. Hancock, having taken a liking to Luffy, offers to take him anywhere. Luffy asks to go to Sabaody the next day. He parties with the Kuja, but has to run away when they try to touch him. He meets Elder Nayun, who reveals Hancock is a warlord. Nayun tells him about Ace's imprisonment and impending execution. Luffy decides to save Ace instead of returning to his crew. Nayun says it will take a week to reach Impel down with a pirate ship, but 4 days with a marine ship. Luffy asks Hancock to accept the marine's summons to Ace's execution. Hancock, who has love sickness for Luffy, agrees. Luffy hides under Hancock's robes as she boards the marine battleship, making arrangements to stop at Impel Down. Luffy hides in Hancock's room on the marine battleship heading to Impel Down. Hancock requests large meals for him. Luffy is awed by the number of battleships at Impel Down. He hides under Hancock's mantle as she disembarks, but realizes she'll be fully checked. Hancock petrifies Domino and the security cameras, allowing Luffy to sneak in. She makes him promise not to cause too much trouble. Luffy hides in the rafters. Luffy follows Ace's Beaver card and sneaks into level 1. He sees Buggy being chased by Blagori. Luffy and Buggy team up to defeat them. Luffy defeats all 5 Blagori and asks Buggy to help him get to level 5, where he believes Ace is. Buggy agrees if he gets Captain John's armband on Luffy's arm. Luffy gives it to him. Buggy crashes into a wall, so Luffy punches through it, sending them into the guard's room and then through another wall into a forest of spikes. They cross the spikes on Buggy's back and reach a pit leading to level 2. They encounter the Basilisk on level 2, which Luffy defeats with Gear 3. The prisoners ask to be freed. Buggy does this instead of helping Luffy. Buggy admits he doesn't know how to get to level 3 and planned to abandon Luffy, but changes his mind when the freed prisoners abandon him. Galdino, Mr. 3 offers to help them. They are chased by beasts, including the Manticores. Galdino realizes Luffy isn't trying to escape and takes him to a staircase to level 3, guarded by the Sphinx. Galdino distracts the Sphinx with wax replicas, but its attacks cause the floor to collapse, sending them to level 3. They land in level 3, Starvation Hell. They are caught in a seastone net by Chief Guard Soldeth, but the Sphinx breaks it. Luffy sees Buggy and Galdino trying to escape and thanks them for bringing him this far, fighting through Blagori and the Sphinx to reach level 4. He is confronted by the Sphinx again, but Mr. 2 Bon Curé, with Zoro's face, appears and attacks the beast. Luffy and Bon Curé defeat the Sphinx and reunite. Bon Curé says he's looking for someone on level 5. They fight more Blagori and encounter the Minotaurus, one of the jailer beasts. They are injured by its spiked club, but Luffy uses Jet Bazooka to send it flying. Bon Curé leads Luffy to a well tower overlooking level 4, Blazing Hell. Bon Curé says he's looking for Emporio Ivankov, Fulva the Okama Queen. Buggy and Galdino arrive, chased by the Minotaurus. They all attack it, and Luffy uses Galdino's candle lock to reinforce his arm and defeat it. They fall to level 4. They avoid falling into a boiling pool of blood. Luffy heads towards the kitchen because of the smell, and Bon Curé follows. They fight more guards, but then encounter Warden Magellan. Bon Curé warns Luffy to run from Magellan's Doku Doku no Mi, Venom fruit powers. Luffy dodges Magellan's poisonous Hydra head. Magellan spits a poison ball at Luffy, overwhelming his senses. Magellan follows him through a poison pathway. Luffy hits Magellan with Jet Bazooka, but his arms are covered in poison. Magellan continues to attack Luffy with poison. He also releases poisonous mist. Luffy is overwhelmed by the poison and is taken to level 5, Freezing Hell, to die. Luffy tries to crawl towards Ace, but passes out. Bon Curé finds him and tries to find Eva, but is attacked by wolves. Luffy wakes up, bites a wolf, knocks them all out, and passes out again. Emporio Ivankov and Inazuma find Luffy and Bon Curé. Luffy pleads with Ivankov to save Bon Curé, so Ivankov decides to help Luffy too. Ivankov takes Luffy to level 5.5, Nakama Land, and explains his treatment. By taking away 10 years of Luffy's life, he has a chance to survive the poison. He injects healing hormones into Luffy, who endures intense pain for 20 hours, instead of the expected 2.5 days. He then breaks out of his chamber, desperately hungry. Luffy eats days worth of rations and recovers. He thanks Ivankov and Bon Curé. He asks if Ivankov will escape, but Ivankov says the time isn't right. Luffy reveals Dragon is his father, shocking Ivankov, who reveals he's a comrade of Dragon's in the Revolutionary Army. Ivankov agrees to help Luffy rescue Ace, and injects him with adrenaline hormones to keep him active for a day. Luffy, Ivankov, and Inazuma head through level 5 to level 6, where Ace is being held. Luffy, Ivankov, and Inazuma reach level 6, but Jinbe tells them Ace has already been taken for execution. Guards block the lift and stairs and release sleeping gas, but Inazuma blocks it. Ivankov says it's best to give up and let Whitebeard rescue Ace, but Luffy refuses and wants to go to Marineford. Crocodile offers to help them escape through the ceiling, but Luffy refuses because of Alabasta. Ivankov says he knows a secret about Crocodile that will keep him in line. Jinbe asks Luffy to free him so he can help save Ace, and Luffy agrees. They free Jinbe and Crocodile. Inazuma creates a path to the ceiling, and they break through to level 5. They fight guards on level 4, joined by prisoners freed by Buggy and Galdino, and Das Bones, freed by Crocodile. Luffy is told to go to level 3, but goes back to help Jinbe and Crocodile defeat the jailer beasts. They are confronted by Chief Guard Sadi, but Ivankov pushes Luffy forward. Luffy faces Vice Warden Hannibal, who refuses to let him pass. Marshal D. Teach. Blackbeard appears and defeats Hannibal. Luffy realizes Blackbeard is the one who captured Ace. Blackbeard says fate was on Luffy's side when Ace stopped him from hunting Luffy. Luffy punches Blackbeard, who slams Luffy into the ground, injuring him with his Yami no Mi dark fruit powers. Jinbe stops Luffy from attacking further. Luffy heads to level 3 as Blackbeard continues his plan. Luffy's group fights through Impel down forces to level 2. While fighting Manticores, Luffy wants to help Ivankov and Inazuma, who are fighting Magellan, but is held back. They reunite with Buggy and Galdino, as Magellan arrives at level 2. Galdino uses his wax to block Magellan's poison. Luffy and Galdino then fight Magellan together, with Galdino creating wax armor for Luffy. However, Magellan uses Kinjite, a powerful poison, forcing them to run. They reach the outside of the prison, but Bon Kure says they don't have a ship yet. Ivankov and Inazuma arrive, having survived Magellan's poison. Luffy contacts Jinbe, who tells them to jump into the sea. Luffy and Galdino hold back Magellan's venom demon, and Ivankov uses Hellwink to blow the prisoners towards the sea. Jinbe calls whale sharks to carry them to a commandeered battleship. They celebrate on the battleship, but are attacked by other marine battleships. The gates of justice are closed. Jinbe continues forward, and as the gate suddenly opens, he reveals Bon Kure stayed behind to open it. Luffy wants to go back, but Jinbe says it's impossible. Jinbe gives Luffy a baby, Dindin Mushi, to contact Bon Kure. They tearfully thank Bon Kure as they escape Impel down. Luffy punches Buggy for taking Bon Kure's sacrifice lightly. He learns Jinbe is a warlord. Marine headquarters calls the battleship, identifying Luffy and Buggy as the instigators of the prison break, saying they can't reach Marineford. Luffy declares he will save Ace. Buggy, hailed by the prisoners as having served on Roger's crew, changes his mind and agrees to go to Marineford with Luffy. The Impel down escapees arrive at Marineford. A giant wave created by Whitebeard carries their ship towards Marineford, but Aokiji freezes it. They break the ice and crash into a marine battleship. Luffy calls out to Ace. Crocodile tries to attack Whitebeard, but Luffy kicks him away. Whitebeard says Luffy is throwing his life away, but Luffy says he'll save Ace and become Pirate King, earning Whitebeard's respect. Luffy tells Whitebeard Ace's execution time has been moved up. Kizaru attacks Luffy, but Ivankov redirects his laser. Hina tries to ensnare Luffy, but he evades her. Gecko Moria summons zombies, and Ace tells Luffy to leave. Luffy says he'll save Ace because he's his brother. Jinbe defeats Moria's zombies. Sengoku reveals Luffy is Dragon's son. Luffy defeats a giant squad member. Smoker hits Luffy with his Jita. Hancock kicks Smoker away and gives Luffy the key to Ace's handcuffs. Luffy runs into Ivankov fighting Kuma. He then encounters Mihawk, who attacks him. Luffy avoids Mihawk's slashes, using Buggy as a shield. He sees Vista fighting Mihawk. Luffy sees the Marines preparing to execute Ace. Kizaru kicks him away. He tumbles to Jinbe and Whitebeard's division commanders, who help him deal with Kizaru. Whitebeard is stabbed by Squard. Whitebeard fights back. Whitebeard's Gura no Mi Tremor Fruit powers almost make Luffy fall into the water. Keikainu melts the ice with magma meteors. Luffy tries to reach an opening in the encircling wall, but is beaten back by Marines. He asks Jinbe for help, and Jinbe sends him over the wall with a blast of seawater. Luffy lands in front of the three admirals. He uses Gear 2 to try to run past them, but Kizaru kicks him back. Crocodile takes out the executioners. Aokiji injures Luffy with an ice spear. Marco attacks Aokiji, allowing Luffy to continue. Luffy's admirals Momonga and Dalmatian overpower Luffy. Kizaru kicks him again. Whitebeard catches Luffy and has his subordinates treat his wounds. Luffy refuses to be sidelined and asks Ivankov for more vigor hormones. Ivankov refuses at first, but then agrees. Luffy races towards the execution platform and is stopped by Kobe, whom he defeats with one punch. Pacifista target Luffy, but Hancock shields him. The executioners try to execute Ace again. Luffy unleashes Conqueror's Haki, knocking them out. More Whitebeard pirates back up Luffy. Mihawk attacks Luffy again, but Daz Bones and Crocodile intercept him. Inazuma creates a ramp to the execution platform. Luffy runs up the ramp, but is stopped by Garp, who says Luffy must beat him to save Ace. Luffy activates Gear 2 and punches Garp off the ramp. The ramp breaks, but Luffy jumps to the execution platform. He is confronted by Sengoku, who turns into a giant Buddha, and Kizaru destroys the key to Ace's handcuffs. Galdino creates a wax wall around Ace as Sengoku prepares to punch him. Luffy absorbs Sengoku's punch with Gomu no Gigant Fuzen, causing the execution platform to collapse. Galdino gives Luffy a wax key, and Luffy frees Ace, who shields them from bazooka fire. Luffy and Ace fight together. Ace protects Luffy from Aokiji. Whitebeard declares he will die to let everyone escape. Ace initially refuses to leave, but after speaking with Whitebeard, they start to move. Ace turns back to confront Akainu after he insults Whitebeard. Luffy drops Ace's Beaver card. Akainu tries to kill Luffy, but Ace takes the blow. Genbi stops Akainu from attacking Ace again. Ace falls into Luffy's arms. Ace tells Luffy to greet Dadan and apologizes for not seeing Luffy's dream come true. He thanks Luffy and the Whitebeard pirates for loving him and dies. Luffy has a mental breakdown. Genbi takes Luffy away from Akainu. Akainu punches through Genbi and hits Luffy, severely injuring his chest. Crocodile sends Luffy and Genbi into the air with a sand cyclone where Buggy catches them. Buggy takes them to Trafalgar Law's submarine, the Polar Tang. Buggy takes Luffy inside as they submerge. Kobe and the Red Hair Pirates help them escape Marineford. Luffy is treated on Law's submarine. 2 weeks later, Luffy wakes up on Amazon Lily, rampaging and asking for Ace. He gradually remembers Ace's death and mourns. He remembers meeting Ace and doubts his ability to become Pirate King. Jinbei tells him not to regret Ace's death and that he hasn't lost everything. Luffy remembers his crew and declares he wants to return to Sabaody. He meets Rayleigh and learns about his and Shaky's connection to Neon, Hancock, and her sisters. Rayleigh says Luffy's crew probably hasn't returned to Sabaody and explains that going back immediately would lead to the same tragedy. Rayleigh makes Luffy a proposition. Word spreads about Luffy being alive. A newspaper article reveals Luffy infiltrated Marineford a second time with Jinbei and Rayleigh. They stole a marine ship and circled Marineford once, a custom for burials at sea. Luffy then went into the plaza alone, rang the ox bell 16 times, threw flowers, and bowed his head in prayer, leaving immediately after. This was a message to his crew. It was 3D2Y, meaning they would meet in Sabaody in 2 years, not 3 days. Luffy is seen resting on the Kuja pirate ship. The Kuja are watching over him. Luffy says he hopes his message reached his crew. Rayleigh assures him it did. Jinbei leaves on a whale shark, thanking Luffy and saying he'll help him in the future. Luffy arrives on Rusukaina, a deserted island near Amazon Lily, with the Kuja and Rayleigh. He will train there with Rayleigh for 2 years. Rayleigh explains the 3 forms of haki, demonstrating them on an elephant. Luffy is eager to learn. Luffy puts his hat on a stone, the only safe spot on the island, with his Beaver card, saying he's taking a vacation from being a pirate for a while. During the time skip, Luffy develops Gear 4 to subdue the beasts on Rusukaina. Rayleigh warns him about its consequences, but later helps him learn to use it properly. While teaching observation haki, Rayleigh makes Luffy dodge 100 times blindfolded or he won't eat. Luffy accidentally hits Rayleigh's dinner, getting hit in return. Animals give Luffy food, but he refuses it. Rayleigh notes Luffy's proficiency in sensing the feelings of living things and mentions people who can see glimpses of the future. Rayleigh says haki grows stronger against stronger opponents. After 2 years, the Kuja prepare a ship for Luffy to sail to Sabaody. Luffy says goodbye to the animals. Hancock gives Luffy a coat and a huge backpack of supplies. Luffy promises to see her and the Kuja again. On Sabaody, Luffy bumps into Damaro Black, who is impersonating him. Black holds Luffy at gunpoint, but Luffy dodges the bullet with observation haki and uses Conqueror's haki to knock Black and his fake crew unconscious. Luffy runs into Manjaro and Drip, impersonating Zoro and Sanji. They take him to Grove 46, where Black was gathering recruits. Luffy is brought on stage, but Marines and Pacifista led by Sentomaru arrive. Luffy discovers Black's impersonation. Pacifista Pax 5 targets Luffy, revealing his true identity. Luffy destroys Pax 5. The real Zoro and Sanji arrive, and defeat another Pacifista. Luffy greets them, and sees Rayleigh, who tells him to rejoin his crew. Luffy proclaims he will become Pirate King, with help from Perona and a bird from the Torino Kingdom. Luffy, Zoro and Sanji reach the Thousand Sunny and reunite with the rest of the crew. They are attacked by a marine battleship, but the Kuja intercept it. The coating on the Sunny is complete. Luffy thanks his crew for training for 2 years and sets sail for Fishman Island. The Straw Hats admire the undersea world. Frankie says Hachan is waiting for them on Fishman Island, and reveals Kuma protected the Sunny during their training, possibly due to his ties to the Revolutionary Army. They are attacked by the Caribou Pirates, whose ship is being pulled by Momo. Momo sees Luffy and Sanji and flees, leaving Caribou, who is promptly tied up. They begin their descent, encountering a Kraken. Luffy decides to tame it. To protect the Sunny's coating, Luffy, Zoro and Sanji wear smaller bubbles. They attack the Kraken, and Luffy uses a Gear 3 punch, with armament haki, Gomu, no elephant gun, to knock it unconscious. They are pulled down by the current into the underworld of the sea. Their bubbles pop, but they get into Zoro's bubble and survive. Luffy tames the Kraken, names it Sarum, and has it attack the giant fishman Wadatsumi. They return to the Sunny and have Sarum carry it to Fishman Island. An undersea volcano erupts, causing a landslide. Sarum takes the Sunny down the final trench. Usopp holds back most of the avalanche, but a rock hits Sarum, knocking him out and causing the Sunny to sink to the ocean floor. The Straw Hats celebrate seeing Fishman Island, but are confronted by Hammond, who demands they submit to the new Fishman pirates. Luffy refuses. Hammond's Sea Beast army attacks, but the Straw Hats use coup de burst to blast away. They go through a barrier that removes the Sunny's coating, and the crew is scattered. Luffy, Usopp, Sanji and Chopper are rescued by Kami and the Medaka mermaid quintuplets, and taken to Kami's apartment. Kami takes them to Mermaid Cove, and says Jinbe has left. The Neptune brothers arrive, searching for the Straw Hats. Sanji has a massive nosebleed, exposing them. Hammond, Yuzu, and Kasagoba arrive. Hammond says human fishman blood transfusions are illegal, and attacks Luffy. Luffy dodges with Gear 2, and knocks out the 3 pirates. Kami takes them onto the Neptune brothers' ship, the Rigu, heading for town. They arrive at Coral Hill, searching for a blood donor for Sanji. They find 2 Okama who agree, and Sanji recovers in Madame Shirley's room. Luffy realizes he was poisoned by Yuzu, but is unaffected due to his immunity from Magellan. Luffy, Usopp, and Kami go to the Mermaid Cafe, and meet Brook and Papag. Papag takes them to his home, passing a candy factory, with Big Mom's Jolly Roger. Papag explains Big Mom protects the island in exchange for candy. They reunite with Nami at a criminal store. King Neptune arrives, and invites them to Rigu Palace. They ride Megalo, Neptune's daughter's shark, to the palace. Neptune reveals Zoro is already there. Nami says Frankie went to find a relative of Tom, and Robin went to research history. At the palace, Luffy smells food and wanders off, finding a tower room with food. He steps on something soft and finds Princess Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi cries out. An axe flies through the door at Shirahoshi, but Luffy intercepts it. The Minister of the Right arrives, and Shirahoshi hides Luffy, lying that she had a bad dream. The minister says the banquet is cancelled, and the Straw Hats will be arrested for kidnapping mermaids, and because of a prophecy that they will destroy Fishman Island. Shirahoshi tells Luffy that Vanderdecken X, who wants to marry her, threw the axe. Dekken's ability allows anything he throws to reach its target, which is why Shirahoshi has been locked in the tower for 10 years. Luffy calls Shirahoshi a crybaby, upsetting her. He offers to take her for a walk outside, promising to protect her from Decken. He sneaks her out in Megalo's mouth. They head to the sea forest. Shirahoshi says she wants to visit a grave there. They pass over Coral Hill, and Luffy sees Sanji and Chopper with an injured Hachan. He jumps off to check on Hachan. Megalo throws Shirahoshi up, shocking everyone. The citizens tie up Luffy, Sanji, and Chopper. Vanderdecken flies towards Shirahoshi. Luffy uses Conqueror's Haki to clear the citizens and while still tied up, kicks Decken off his coral, then uses Gomu, no Jet Hammer to defeat him. Shirahoshi unties the Straw Hats. Decken summons Wadatsumi to attack. Luffy hits Wadatsumi in the tooth with a Gear 2 punch, allowing them to escape on Megalo. The group arrives at the sea forest and reunites with Frankie before meeting Jinbe. Shirahoshi visits her mother Otohime's grave. Nami and Kami arrive, revealing Hody Jones and the new Fishman pirates have invaded Ryugo Palace. Jinbe confesses he released Arlong into the East Blue, and explains the history of racism and violence between humans and fishmen, mentioning Otohime and Fisher Tiger. Luffy falls asleep during most of this. Hody broadcasts himself, showing Neptune in chains and saying he'll execute him in 3 hours at Giancord Plaza. He shows Zoro, Usopp, and Brook caged and about to be submerged. Luffy wants to go to Ryugo Palace, but Jinbe stops him, wanting to handle Hody himself. Luffy refuses to wait. Jinbe attacks Luffy with Fishman Karate, hurting him despite his rubber body. Luffy retaliates with a Gear 2 punch. Robin creates a clone to break them up, but Sanji tries to intervene, and Luffy and Jinbei punch him too. Robin calms things down. Jinbei tries to explain his plan, but Luffy is still unconvinced. Jinbei says Luffy can still fight Hody, but as a hero, not an angry human. Luffy doesn't want to be a hero, so Jinbei offers him meat. Jinbei's plan is for Luffy to stow away in Megalo's mouth and be captured intentionally. Then, after rescuing Neptune, Jinbei will call for Luffy's help, gaining public support. Luffy hides in Megalo's mouth with Jinbei and Shirahoshi, but Shirahoshi goes into a trap and is captured with them. They are brought before Hody at Giant Cord Plaza. Hody announces his plan to execute the Neptune family. The populace pleads for Luffy to arrive. Luffy emerges from Megalo's mouth and kicks Hody with Gear 2. The rest of the Straw Hats reveal themselves. An onlooker asks if Luffy is a friend or foe, and Luffy says they should decide for themselves. Hody boasts about his 100,000 strong army, and says he'll become Pirate King. Luffy uses Conqueror's Haki to knock out 50,000 of them. He then uses Gear 3 to take out more. The Straw Hats overwhelm Hody's forces. Hody orders Sorame to attack, but Luffy calls out to Sorame, who turns against Hody. Hody threatens to kill Sorame's brother. Sorame starts crushing Shirahoshi, but Luffy stops him, promising to protect Sorame's brother. Luffy walks towards Hody, with Zoro protecting him, and kicks Hody in the face. Hody tries to blow Luffy's head off, but it stretches back. Luffy uses armament Haki on his forehead and breaks through iron shields, then uses Haki to counter Hody's attacks and hit him. The giant ship Noah arrives, sent by Dekken. Shirahoshi leaves the island's bubble to protect everyone. Luffy tells his crew to let him handle it. Jinbei gives him coral to create bubbles, and Sanji launches him towards Noah. Luffy grabs onto Noah's chains and gets in a bubble when it exits the barrier. Hody swims up to attack, but Fukaboshi arrives and carries Luffy to safety. Hody stabs Dekken, sending Noah sinking towards Fishman Island. Hody attacks Shirahoshi, but Luffy punches him away, even with the seawater weakening him. Hody says Luffy can't protect anyone underwater, but Luffy says he trained for 2 years to protect everything. Shirahoshi tries to redirect Noah, but Dekken passes out, causing Noah to continue sinking. Luffy decides to destroy Noah, but Fukaboshi says it's historically important. Luffy hits Hody towards Noah, but is bitten on the shoulder. Hody realizes Luffy is going inside Noah's bubble, and uses his sword Kirisame to break it. Fukaboshi then fights Hody, but is defeated. A group of Ryugu palace workers fire a large bubble at Noah, allowing Luffy to access it again. Hody attacks Luffy and Shirahoshi again, but Luffy breaks Hody's sword Kirisame. Fukaboshi calls Luffy and the island, revealing Hody's true nature. He never experienced human discrimination, but inherited the hatred of others. Fukaboshi laments that his mother's efforts for peace failed to quell this hatred, and says the only way forward is to destroy Fishman Island. Luffy reaffirms his promise to protect the island, and uses a flaming armament, Haki Punch, Gomu Gomu no Red Hawk, to hit Hody. Luffy has Shirahoshi take him to Noah. Hody attacks with Fishman Jujutsu, but Luffy dodges and uses Gear 3, Gomu Gomu no Elephant Gun, to finally defeat him. Luffy pummels Noah with Gear 3, intending to destroy it, but hears a mysterious voice telling him to stop. Shirahoshi says Sea Kings are holding Noah in place. Luffy relaxes and loses consciousness due to blood loss. Shirahoshi takes Luffy to John Cord Plaza, asking for help with his bleeding. Chopper says Luffy needs a transfusion, but the fishmen hesitate due to the law. Shenbi offers his blood, as they have the same blood type. The transfusion is successful, and Luffy wakes up, asking Jinbei to join his crew. Jinbei says he can't yet, but will after resolving his current responsibilities. Neptune invites them to a feast at Ryugu Palace. Jinbei tells Luffy about world events. Aokiji and Akainu fought to become fleet admiral, with Akainu winning, and Aokiji leaving the Marines. The Marines and the Blackbeard pirates have grown stronger. Blackbeard now has Whitebeard's position as one of the 4 emperors, and is hunting devil fruit users. Luffy doesn't pay much attention. They hear Shirahoshi crying. Luffy finds Caribou trying to kidnap her, and sends him flying. The Minister of the Right says Caribou also stole the palace's treasure. Nami sends Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji to retrieve Caribou. They find Caribou passed out with the treasure. They take the treasure and pass by the candy factory, where Luffy says he ate lots of sweets at the palace. This interests Peckham's and Baron Tamago of the Big Mom Pirates, who are there to collect Fishman Island's candy tribute. Tamago says Big Mom will destroy the island if they don't get the tribute. Big Mom calls Peckham's and Tamago. Luffy answers, introduces himself, and says he ate the candy. He offers her the treasure instead. Big Mom doesn't believe him, but is intrigued and agrees to target him instead of the island. Luffy says he'll defeat Big Mom and make Fishman Island his territory. He gives the treasure to Peckham's and Tamago. Luffy tells the others what he did. They are not pleased, especially Nami. The Straw Hats prepare to leave. Shirahoshi asks Luffy to stay. Nami receives a new log pose pointing to 3 islands. Luffy wants to go to the most dangerous one. They argue. Luffy says goodbye. Shirahoshi promises to not be a crybaby next time, and to walk on the surface with him. They pinky swear. As the sunny descends, Luffy remembers what he was told about the new world, and meeting Shanks and expresses his excitement. The sunny is caught in a white storm current, but is saved by island whales. They reach a burning island, Punk Hazard, despite no log pose pointing there. They receive a distress call about a samurai attacking people. Luffy, Zoro, Usopp and Robin go to the island on the mini Mary-Do, cutting through a marine fence. They encounter a talking dragon that attacks them with fire. Luffy hurts it by hitting its underbelly. He finds a man stuck in the dragon's head, who was the one calling for help. Zoro decapitates the dragon. Luffy pulls the man out, but only his legs remain. Luffy attaches the legs to himself, pretending to be a centaur, while they eat the dragon. Zoro finds the other side of the island is covered in ice. Luffy encounters a leopard centaur, which he defeats. Robin defeats a giraffe centaur. Brook calls, saying intruders have captured the others, and taken them to the Icelands. Usopp creates a boat. They are confronted by the leopard centaur and his boss, Brown Beard, who attacks them. Brook arrives and holds off the centaurs. They reach the other side. They force Brown Beard to take them through the Icelands. They find Trafalgar Law, now a warlord. Luffy is happy to see him. Law says he acted on a whim in saving Luffy at Marineford. Marines from G5 arrive, led by Smoker and Tashigi, who were just defeated by Law. The Straw Hats leave. Law tells Luffy he'll find what he seeks at the back of the lab. They reunite with Nami, Sanji, Chopper and Frankie, but their souls are in the wrong bodies due to Law's powers. They are with large children and the head of the samurai, Kinemon. They learn the distress call was from one of Brownbeard's subordinates, being attacked by Kinemon, who is looking for his son Momonosuke. Kinemon is cut into 3 pieces by Law. Brownbeard reveals his master is Caesar Clown, who helped him and others walk again after a chemical weapon explosion under Dr. Vegapunk. Law joined forces with Caesar a few months ago and made them centaurs. Brownbeard says the Straw Hats will become test subjects. Kinemon goes to find his torso. The children ask for candy, which Chopper discovers is addictive and makes them grow unnaturally large. Luffy refuses the candy. One of the children, Sind, attacks Luffy.
Usopp neutralizes the children.
Luffy decides to confront Caesar. Robin and Frankie in Chopper's body leave, but return after an explosion. They encounter the Yeti Cool brothers Rock and Scotch, who attack Luffy. They vanish before Luffy can attack. Chopper in Sanji's body says the brothers captured Nami and Frankie's body. Luffy goes to save her, accompanied by Frankie, who eats Rumble Balls and enters Monster Point, attacking Luffy. They fall into a gorge set by the brothers. Luffy uses armament haki to punch through ice spikes. Rock attacks, but Luffy redirects the blasts. Frankie regains his mind and catches a falling mountain peak sent by Scotch, defeating Rock. Luffy knocks out Frankie. Scotch takes Nami and escapes. Law appears and defeats Scotch, freeing Nami. Law tells Luffy he wants to talk and offers an alliance to take down Kaido, one of the 4 emperors. Luffy agrees, wanting to take down all 4. Law says the plan has low odds. Luffy, Law, Nami, and Frankie return to the lab ruins. Law returns Chopper and Frankie to their original bodies, putting Nami in Sanji's. Luffy says they want to save the children. Law reluctantly agrees. Law says their objective is to capture Caesar, who has the Logia-type Gasu no Mi Gas fruit. Luffy, Frankie, and Robin crash into a marine battleship at Caesar's lab, announcing Luffy's intention to beat and kidnap Caesar. Smoker and Tashigi attack, but their bodies have been switched by Law. Luffy tells Smoker to wait until they get their bodies back. Slime globs fall from the sky and combine into a larger mass, exploding on a G5 ship. Caesar arrives and explains the slime, but Luffy tries to grab him. Caesar uses his powers, forcing Luffy to inhale poison gas, but Luffy is immune due to his fight with Magellan. Luffy kicks Caesar, who creates an explosion. Caesar combines his gas with the slime for a bigger explosion, but Luffy dodges and kicks Caesar again. Caesar removes the oxygen around Luffy, making him unconscious. Caesar defeats Robin, Frankie, Smoker, and Tashigi and imprisons them and Luffy with Law in a sea stone cage. They are with Caesar's comrades Virgo and Monet. Law reveals Virgo is a Marine Vice Admiral and Doflamingo's undercover agent. Caesar reveals he knew about Law's treachery and uses Law's heart to attack him. He broadcasts to the underworld, announcing his living slime, Smiley, created from the chemical weapon explosion 4 years ago, which he will transform into Shinokuni. Smiley eats special candy and becomes a gas that petrifies anything it touches. Caesar says everyone will be killed by the gas, and moves their cage outside. Law tells Luffy to stick to their counterattack plan. Frankie sets a ship on fire to create smoke, allowing Law to free himself and the others by switching their sea stone chains with regular ones. Luffy breaks out of the cage and looks for a way into the lab. Law teleports them inside. They open the shutters for the G5 Marines, followed by the rest of the Straw Hats, except Chopper, Kinemon, and Brownbeard. Law says they have 2 hours to reach Section R66 to escape Shinokuni. Luffy races towards Caesar, easily defeating his henchmen with Gomu Gomu no UFO. Luffy and Smoker race into the corridor leading to Section B. They reach Section C, where Caesar is, and Luffy punches him. Luffy and Caesar fight. Luffy avoids Caesar's oxygen depletion by moving out of range. Monet blocks Luffy's Haki-hardened Gear 2 attack with a snow wall and tells Caesar to flee. Monet creates a 10-layer igloo around Luffy and hugs him, depleting his stamina. Luffy breaks through the floor and falls into the trash heap below, unable to get back up. Luffy meets Momonosuke, a small pink dragon. Momonosuke says he was taken to Punk Hazard for Caesar's experiments, but refused food. He ate a devil fruit and became a dragon. He overheard Caesar saying the children would die from his tests in 5 years. Luffy becomes angry and wants to climb out of the trash heap. Luffy yells at Momonosuke, who summons clouds that propel them out of the chamber. Luffy orders a henchman to tell him where Caesar is. Luffy breaks into Section R as Caesar attacks Brownbeard. Luffy asks Caesar about lying to everyone. Caesar says this island is backed by powerful forces, producing sad, which Doflamingo uses to make smile, artificial Zoan devil fruits, sold to Kaido. Caesar warns Luffy about angering powerful figures, but Luffy attacks him anyway. Caesar fires an explosive beam, but Luffy dodges and continues attacking. Caesar opens vents to release Shinokuni into Section R, merging with the gas to become bigger and stronger, not caring about his henchmen. Luffy runs back towards Section B, then returns, inflating his arms with Gear 3 and imbuing them with armament haki. Caesar is fearful and offers to work with Luffy, but Luffy launches Gomu Gomu no Grizzly Magnum, blasting Caesar out of the lab. Zoro, Nami, Sanji, Robin, the children, Tashigi, and the G5 Marines arrive, followed by Law and Smoker. Law asks where Caesar is. Luffy tells him, and Law says they need to find him. Everyone gathers into a sad cart, and Luffy agrees to leave once his crew is accounted for. An explosion from the sad room rocks the corridor, forcing them to protect the cart from falling rubble. They emerge unharmed on the coast. Frankie is battling Buffalo and Baby 5 of Doflamingo's crew, sent to retrieve Caesar. They quickly apprehend Caesar and try to fly off. Nami and Usopp neutralize Buffalo and Baby 5, and Usopp traps Caesar with sea stone handcuffs. Caesar, Buffalo, and Baby 5 are apprehended. The pirates and Marines split up. Brownbeard and his men are arrested. Kinemon, thought to be killed by Shinokuni, emerges alive after his petrification shatters and reunites with Momonosuke. Law cures the children of Caesar's drugs. Sanji makes food for Kinemon and Momonosuke. Despite Law saying they need to leave, they have a party. The Marines and children depart on the sad tanker, thanking the pirates. The Straw Hats, Law, and Kinemon leave Punk Hazard on the Sunny, sailing for Dressrosa, Doflamingo's base. Luffy and Law explain their alliance to take down Kaido. Law explains their next step, destroying Doflamingo's Smile Factory to cut off Kaido's access to artificial Zoan fruits. Kinemon and Momonosuke want to go to Dressrosa as well, as a comrade is held there. Night falls with no attacks. The next morning they learn from the news that Doflamingo has left the 7 warlords and his throne to meet Law's demands to get Caesar back. The news also reveals Luffy and Law's alliance. Law contacts Doflamingo to discuss the next part of their negotiation. Luffy interrupts, asking Doflamingo if he's Caesar's boss. Doflamingo says he wants to see Luffy and has something Luffy wants, which Luffy thinks is meat. Luffy is put into a trance until Usopp snaps him out of it. Law tells Doflamingo he'll bring Caesar to Green Bit. He and the Straw Hats plan to destroy the Smile Factory on Dressrosa. Luffy is excited to see Dressrosa. He overhears Law and Kinemon talking about Zoe. He listens to Kinemon and Momonosuke's story about being shipwrecked on Dressrosa and Momonosuke being separated from his father. Luffy decides to save Kanjuro too. The Thousand Sunny approaches Dressrosa. They disembark and begin their operation. Luffy wants to use Momonosuke's dragon form to fly, but Momonosuke refuses. They argue until Kinemon stops them. They split into 3 teams. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Frankie, and Kinemon go to destroy the factory and rescue Kanjuro. They see living toys. They get disguises and stop at a restaurant. They see thugs taking advantage of a blind man in roulette. The man demonstrates a gravity-like ability when the thugs attack Luffy. The man leaves, saying, "It's better if Luffy doesn't know who he is." One of Zoro's swords is stolen, and Zoro, Sanji, and Kinemon chase the thief. Luffy tries to follow but is stopped by Frankie. They interrogate a Doflamingo subordinate for the Smile Factory's location. The thug says he doesn't know, but says most of Doflamingo's crew is at the Coliseum for a tournament with a big prize. Luffy thinks it's meat, but the thug says it's Ace's former devil fruit. Luffy decides to compete for the fruit. He offers it to Frankie, who declines. Frankie says Luffy deserves to fight for it. Luffy and Frankie arrive at Kurita Coliseum and meet Thunder Soldier, a one-legged toy soldier. Frankie tells Luffy to keep his identity secret. Luffy almost signs his real name, but signs as Luffy. Thanks to Frankie, he meets the other contestants. Spartan attacks Luffy, who easily defeats him. A Coliseum staff member almost disqualifies Luffy, but Sai and Boo of the Chinjao family intervene. Luffy learns he's in C block. He sees armor and puts some on. He meets Cavendish, captain of the Beautiful Pirates. Luffy accidentally tells him his real name, but the others think he mispronounced Luffy. Cavendish tells Luffy his backstory about resenting the 11 supernovas, but Luffy ignores him. He sees a statue of Kairos and meets Rebecca, who tells him Kairos' story. Rebecca wants to win the Mera Mera no Mai to defeat Doflamingo. The winner of a block is announced. Jesus Burgess Luffy looks at the warriors defeated by Burgess. Bellamy approaches him and says he also visited Skypiea. Bellamy says he joined the tournament to join Doflamingo's crew and has no grudge against Luffy. Luffy watches B block with Cavendish. Shinjao asks Luffy about Garp, revealing Luffy's identity to Cavendish. Luffy denies his identity, but Cavendish draws his sword. Shinjao attacks Luffy with a headbutt. Cavendish blocks the headbutt. Shinjao attacks both Luffy and Cavendish. Boo and Sai stop Shinjao. Luffy hides. He watches Bartolomeo deflect Hack's attack, damaging Hack's hand. Luffy wonders how Bartolomeo damaged Hack. He sees Bellamy can't stand against Bartolomeo's power. He cheers Bellamy on. King Elizabello uses his King Punch, taking out all the remaining gladiators. Luffy is impressed. Bartolomeo emerges unharmed, revealing he ate the Bari Bari no Mai, barrier fruit, and created a barrier. He defeats the king and wins B block, surprising Luffy. Bellamy and Luffy have a friendly chat about how they've changed. Bartolomeo overhears Bellamy calling Luffy Straw Hat in Sail Block. Luffy enters the ring before Cavendish can confront him. He effortlessly defeats an opponent. He tames a fighting bull, Yusi, and rides it. Hadruden stops Yusi. Luffy avenges Yusi by knocking out Hadruden. He returns to the fight, but Jin Ango steals his helmet, forcing him to use his cape to hide his identity. Jin Ango throws weapons at Luffy, who dodges them. The weapons hit Shinjao. Luffy takes back his helmet. Shinjao knocks out Jin Ango. Luffy decides to fight Shinjao. He knocks out Sai, while Shinjao knocks out Ideo. Luffy and Shinjao clash fists, unleashing Conqueror's Haki. Luffy declares his goal of becoming Pirate King. Shinjao asks who taught him Haki, and Luffy says Rayleigh. Shinjao cries about a treasure he couldn't acquire. Luffy tells him to choose between crying and being angry, and continues fighting. Luffy takes punches from Shinjao and retaliates with Gomu no Hawk Rifle. Shinjao mocks Luffy, saying the worst generation are greenhorns, and his attempts to surpass Roger are laughable. He enrages Luffy by saying executing Ace was a smart move, then uses Gear 3 Gomu no Thor Elephant Gun. Shinjao takes the attack head-on with a headbutt. Luffy gains the upper hand, restoring Shinjao's head to its pre-Garp fight shape. Shinjao is knocked out, splitting the arena. Luffy wins Sail Block. Cavendish attacks Luffy, but Luffy catches his sword. Shinjao arrives to thank Luffy but accidentally breaks the floor. Luffy runs from them and is saved by Rebecca. He runs into Burgess, who is talking to Blackbeard. Luffy says he won't let Ace's power fall into Blackbeard's hands. Rebecca buys Luffy food. Some gladiators try to kill Luffy. Luffy dodges and pins Rebecca. She asks why he doesn't retaliate. Luffy says he won't hurt someone who bought him food. Rebecca tells him about the convict gladiators imprisoned for opposing Doflamingo. She wants the Mera Mera no Mai to protect herself and the Thunder Soldier. Rebecca explains that toys are like humans. Her mother died, and Thunder Soldier became her guardian. Gats announces D block is about to begin. The audience boos Rebecca. Luffy wonders why. A convict gladiator says Rebecca is the previous king's granddaughter. Luffy says Rebecca has nothing to do with her grandfather, which the convicts agree with. Cavendish defends Rebecca, and Luffy says he's not so bad. Luffy watches Rebecca fight, and notices she can use observation haki. He cheers her on. He moves to a different spot to watch. The convicts tell him about the country's dark side. He encounters Bartolomeo. Bartolomeo guides Luffy to Zoro and Kinemon. Zoro is annoyed he wasn't in the Coliseum. Bartolomeo informs Luffy that the Coliseum is surrounded by Marines. They have a conference call with Sanji and Frankie's group, learning about Dressrosa's true situation. Luffy allows Frankie to help the dwarves and toys. A battle between Law and Doflamingo ends outside the Coliseum, with Doflamingo standing over Law. Doflamingo shoots Law 3 times. Luffy yells at Doflamingo, who says it's his duty to discipline Law. Zoro and Kinemon rush to save Law. Zoro is intercepted by Issho the blind man, and Doflamingo kicks Kinemon away. Luffy tries to help but realizes the Coliseum windows have sea stone bars. Kinemon reveals the blind man is an admiral. Doflamingo and Issho float above their opponents, taking Law to the palace. Marines pursue Zoro and Kinemon. Zoro tells Luffy to find the exit. They hear the Sunny is under attack by the Big Mom pirates, who want sea Caesar. Nami tells Luffy that Law tried to keep Caesar and Momonosuke from Doflamingo. Luffy allows Sanji's group to go to Zoo and counterattack the Big Mom pirates. He leaves Frankie's group in charge of destroying the Smile Factory and goes to the palace with Zoro and Kinemon to rescue Law and fight Doflamingo. While looking for an exit, Luffy finds Bartolomeo carrying Bellamy. Luffy says rescuing his friend is his priority. Bartolomeo says he will get the Mera Mera no Mi for him. Someone interrupts, saying the fruit can't be given to Luffy. Luffy recognizes him as Sabo, his believed dead brother. Luffy cries and embraces Sabo. Sabo is glad Luffy is alive. Luffy lets Sabo eat the Mera Mera no Maiden. Luffy gives Sabo his gladiator costume, so Sabo can take his place in the tournament. Luffy escapes the Colosseum and meets Zoro and Kinemon. They disguise themselves. Luffy is still crying about Sabo. Luffy, Zoro, and Kinemon arrive at the palace lift with Wicca. They meet Viola, who offers to guide them. They learn about her ties to the Riku family and are led to a secret passage. They use a supply basket and Luffy acts as a counterweight. They arrive at the palace Rampart Tower. Luffy smashes through the gate. They charge in. At Rampart Tower B1, they are intercepted by Pika. Viola explains Pika's devil fruit ability. Pika tries to crush them with the palace walls. Zoro holds off Pika while Luffy and Viola rush ahead, hampered by Pika's ability to create dead ends. They run into Thunder Soldier about to be destroyed by Gladius. Luffy knocks Gladius away and catches Thunder Soldier. Viola pulls Luffy away, saying Gladius is too dangerous. Finding no stairs, Luffy jumps out a window and stretches his leg to the second floor outside the room of suits. They overhear Doflamingo trying to get Law to reveal the Straw Hat's plan. Viola tells Luffy to wait. They see Gladius and his men approaching. Thunder Soldier realizes the Straw Hats are pirates, but is reassured they share the same goal. Thunder Soldier transforms back into a human Kairos. Viola tells Luffy about Kairos and Dressrosa's history. Kairos decapitates Doflamingo. Luffy grabs Viola and rushes in to save Law. Viola gives Luffy the keys to Law's cuffs. And Law says their alliance is over, but Luffy ignores him. Pika interrupts the rescue. Luffy is surprised to see Doflamingo still alive. The decapitated Doflamingo was a copy. Kairos attacks the copy. The real Doflamingo appears behind Kairos and tries to behead him, slicing the palace. Luffy saves Kairos. Doflamingo and his copy attack Luffy and Kairos, who jump away. Luffy uses Jet Gatling, but Doflamingo blocks it. His copy strikes Luffy from behind. Pika throws Luffy, Law, Kairos, Viola, and Riku Doldafurs out of the palace. They watch Doflamingo initiate his birdcage plan, trapping everyone on Dressrosa. After Pika moves the royal palace to Flower Hill, Doflamingo forces everyone into a survival game, putting bounties on 12 people, including Luffy and his crew. Luffy tells Rebecca through Denden Mushi that the toy soldier is her father and tells her to stay with Asap, Robin, and Sabo. He declares he will defeat Doflamingo and grabs Zoro and Law to pursue him. They land in a crowd of enemies and fight Senor Pink, Mashad, and Dellinger. Dressrosa citizens attack them. Ishem arrives, but Pika appears as a massive stone giant. Luffy laughs at Pika's voice, angering him. Pika punches them to the Colosseum Square. Cavendish says he no longer holds a grudge against Luffy and offers to defeat Doflamingo, but Luffy refuses. The Colosseum fighters who want to fight Doflamingo join them: the Chinjao family, Hajrudin, Elizabeth Thor, Dagama, Abdullah, Jeet, Orlumbus, Ideo, Suleiman, and Blue Gilly. They march towards the palace and battle Pika. Chinjao and Elizabeth Thor shatter Pika's stone hand, allowing Luffy to advance. Pika attacks with his other arm, forcing the others back. Luffy, Zoro, Law, Abdullah, Jeet, and Yusi climb Pika's arm. Pika regrows his arm. Luffy shatters Pika's stone head with Grizzly Magnum. Zoro finds Pika's real body. Pika tries to attack the group on Yusi, but Luffy carries Yusi and evades. Zoro intercepts Pika as Yusi runs on Pika's back. Law reveals to Luffy that the plan to defeat Kaido was a trick to get revenge on Doflamingo for killing Karazhan, Doflamingo's brother and Law's benefactor. Luffy, Law, Yusi, Abdullah, and Jeet reach the first level of the New King's Plateau. Luffy repels Doflamingo's troops. Kelly Funk fused with Bobby Funk appears, seemingly to help. Law asks about his sea stone handcuffs, but Luffy says it will be okay. Kelly shows them a tunnel to the 4th level. Luffy and Law are shocked when Abdullah and Jeet fall off. Robin contacts them, saying she'll meet them on the 4th level. Luffy, Law, and Yusi reach a dead end. A Doflamingo string clone appears. The clone attacks Yusi, knocking him out. Law and Luffy fall into water and become powerless. Abdullah and Jeet destroy the clone. Luffy punches a hole to the 2nd level with Elephant Gun and carries Law ahead. Cavendish approaches, saying he has a plan. Luffy and Law ride Cavendish's horse. Kairos joins them on Faro. Kairos is shocked to hear Rebecca is heading to the 4th level. Luffy says a crewmate is with her. The Colosseum fighters create an opening for Luffy, Kairos, and Cavendish. Faro charges towards the 3rd level. Luffy repels Doflamingo's troops. They argue about who will defeat Doflamingo's. They reach the 3rd level and encounter giant toy soldiers. One bites Faro. Luffy punches it away. Robin, Bartolomeo, and Gladius fall in front of them. Robin and Bartolomeo hold back Gladius and the toys, allowing Luffy's group to continue to the 4th level. Bartolomeo creates a stairway to the 4th level. Karos goes ahead, Cavendish stays on the 3rd level, Luffy carries Law to the 4th level, Gladius launches Rupture Bullet, Bartolomeo protects Luffy, Luffy and Law reach the 4th level, Rebecca gives them the key to Law's handcuffs, Karos tells Luffy and Law to go ahead, while he fights Diamante. Luffy tells Rebecca he's glad she saw her father again. Rebecca asks if he will defeat Doflamingo, still calling him Lucy. Luffy says his name is not Lucy. Diamante tries to stop them, but Law teleports himself and Luffy to the palace pool garden. Sugar approaches, intending to turn them into toys. Usopp snipes her, making her lose consciousness, saving Luffy and Law. Luffy and Law finally reach Doflamingo. Luffy is enraged by Doflamingo's treatment of Bellamy. Law warns him to control his emotions. Luffy attacks Doflamingo, who uses Bellamy as a shield. Doflamingo creates a string clone to fight Law, and controls Bellamy to fight Luffy. Bellamy begs Luffy to stop, but Luffy refuses, considering him a friend. Luffy aims an attack at Law. Law uses Shambles to switch places with Doflamingo, allowing Luffy to hit Doflamingo with Red Hawk. Doflamingo stops Law from attacking Treble and incapacitates him with Fulbright. He kicks Luffy, ties his hands, and has Bellamy slash him. Doflamingo tells them about his past as a world noble. He sends his string clone and Bellamy to confront Luffy. Luffy defeats the clone with Jet Gatling. He demands Doflamingo release Bellamy. Doflamingo frees Bellamy. Luffy tells Bellamy to rest, but Bellamy continues fighting, attacking Luffy with Spring Hopper. Luffy yells at Bellamy for siding with Doflamingo, and says it's not worth fighting, but Bellamy ignores him. Luffy knocks out Bellamy like he did on Jaya. Luffy yells Doflamingo's name. Luffy resumes his battle with Doflamingo on the palace rooftops. He finds Law covered in blood. Doflamingo says Law is dead. Luffy refuses to believe him. Doflamingo mocks Law's last words about the Straw Hats creating miracles. Luffy screams in rage. Doflamingo prepares to end his game. Doflamingo says his Torikago birdcage is shrinking and will destroy everything in Dressrosa in 1 hour. Luffy says he'll stop it by defeating Doflamingo. Luffy charges. Law appears and uses Gamma Knife to damage Doflamingo's internal organs. Treble tries to attack Law, but Luffy kicks him away. Law uses Countershock on Doflamingo and collapses. Doflamingo stands up, using his string powers to fix his internal injuries. Doflamingo tries to stomp on Law's head, but Luffy intervenes. Doflamingo and Luffy battle intensely using Armament and Conqueror's Haki. Doflamingo evades and kicks Luffy with Athlete's Thread, sending Luffy into Treble's trap. Treble holds Luffy so Doflamingo can finish off Law. Treble leaves Luffy trapped, and goes to Law. Luffy sees Law wounding Treble and is caught in Treble's explosion. Luffy escapes the explosion and carries Law to Robin's group on the flower field, telling them to help Law. Doflamingo shoots at Robin with Tomato, but Luffy kicks him with Gomu. Gomu no Hawk Whip. Cavendish deflects Doflamingo's bullet. Luffy tells Cavendish to take Law, and the others away. Cavendish initially refuses, but Luffy entrusts their lives to him, making Cavendish think Luffy is his fan. Luffy resumes his battle with Doflamingo, hitting him with Armament Haki punches. Doflamingo says Luffy's attacks are quick, but lack power and attacks with overheat, sending Luffy flying. Doflamingo says he's followed Luffy's career and kicks him into the palace wall. Luffy gets back up, and attacks with Gomu. Gomu no Grizzly Magnum. Doflamingo avoids it, and kicks Luffy. Doflamingo taunts Luffy about the shrinking Torikago killing his friends. Luffy becomes enraged and prepares to activate Gear 4. In this form, Luffy's torso becomes massive, and he can only bounce. Doflamingo mocks him. Luffy sinks his arm into his body and hits Doflamingo with Gomu Gomu no Kong Gun, sending Doflamingo flying into the streets, drop kicking him with Gomu Gomu no Rhino Schneider, sending him through buildings. Doflamingo flies up, and Luffy meets him, attacking with Gomu Gomu no Culverin Cannon, but Doflamingo summons strings from the ground, revealing his Devil Fruit awakening. Luffy wonders if Doflamingo is even a Paramecia anymore. 20 minutes later, Luffy fights Doflamingo's strings, while listening to Riku's speech to the citizens. Doflamingo turns much of the town into string to attack Luffy, who evades and attacks with Gomu Gomu no Leo Bazooka, sending Doflamingo crashing into the Palace Mountain. Luffy sees the Torikago birdcage is still active. He flies to the Palace Mountain to finish Doflamingo, but Gear 4 wears off. Gats arrives and helps Luffy up, saying the Colosseum gladiators are there to help. Luffy asks for 10 minutes to recover. Stax takes him to safety. Burgess attacks them but is stopped by Sabo. Sabo holds back Burgess. Luffy says he'll defeat Doflamingo when his Haki recharges. Sabo entrusts Gats with Luffy's safety. Law teleports to their location. With 3 minutes left, Law protects Luffy. Luffy's Haki recharges. With Law's help, Luffy prevents Rebecca from cutting down Viola and confronts Doflamingo again. Doflamingo attacks Luffy and Rebecca with strings, but Law saves Rebecca. Doflamingo attacks Luffy, turning a part of the town into string for 1,000 flat thread arrows. Doflamingo immobilizes Luffy and taunts him, saying the slaughter could have been avoided if the people accepted manipulation. Luffy reactivates Gear 4 and breaks the strings. They fight in the sky. Doflamingo says Luffy has no chance due to his commoner's blood and tries to trap him in Spider's net. Luffy enlarges his right arm for his final attack. Doflamingo unleashes 16 God Threads. Luffy's King Kong gun breaks through and slams Doflamingo into the ground, destroying buildings and shattering his sunglasses. Luffy's attack defeats Doflamingo and the Torikogo collapses. Luffy deflates and falls. Law teleports him to the ground. Luffy passes out. After Doflamingo's defeat, Luffy's group goes to Kairos' old house to rest. 3 days later, Luffy hears a rumor about Rebecca's father and is not pleased. Bartolomeo arrives, saying the Marines are mobilizing and he and the gladiators have planned an escape route. Luffy runs out, but stays behind, saying he has something to do. Zoro tells Luffy to hurry. Luffy goes to the palace and finds Rebecca, asking if she's okay with Kairos leaving. Rebecca says no. Luffy offers to take her to him. He takes Rebecca to Kairos' house, and then runs to the eastern port. Luffy reaches the port as his show is about to attack his allies with rubble. Luffy attacks his show with a Haki-imbued Gear 3 attack. He says he's tired of running from an admiral. They clash. Luffy announces his attacks before striking. Luffy's show wonders if Luffy is pitying him due to his blindness. Luffy says he won't attack without warning a blind opponent. His show laughs. His show uses his gravity ability. Hadruden catches Luffy, the Straw Hats Law, and their allies flee across a bridge to a large ship. Isho prepares to bombard nearby ships with rubble, but Dressrosa citizens chase the pirates. Isho stops his attack, letting them escape. Luffy and his allies reach Orlumbus's flagship, the Yanta Maria. Cavendish, including Suleiman, Bartolomeo, Sai, Ideo, including Blue Gilly, Abdullah, and Jeet, Leo, Hadruden, and Orlumbus pledge allegiance to Luffy. Luffy declines drinking sake to complete the alliance. He doesn't want to be someone great and powerful, but someone free, and doesn't want to take away his allies' freedom. The allies form the alliance anyway, creating the Straw Hat Fleet. Sai, Bartolomeo, Leo, Cavendish, Ideo, Orlumbus, and Hadruden drink sake. Zoro drinks the rest of Luffy's sake. They celebrate their victory over Doflamingo. As they leave Dressrosa, pirates affected by Doflamingo's defeat chase the Yanta Maria Grand Fleet. Isho drops rubble on the enemy ships. Kairos and Rebecca watch from afar, starting their new life together. After the feast, each ally receives Luffy's Viver card and parts ways. Bartolomeo takes the Straw Hats, the Samurais, and Law to his ship, the Going Luffy Senpai. Zoro sees the Straw Hats' increased bounties. Bartolomeo shows Luffy's group their new wanted posters. During a hailstorm, Luffy learns the Barta Club has no navigator and relies on a granny for bad advice. The Straw Hats, Samurais, and Law protect the ship. After a week, they arrive at Zoo, an island on a 1,000-year-old giant elephant's back. The Barta Club departs. Searching for Sanji's group, they climb the elephant's leg with a dragon, conjured by Kanjuro. The Samurais are also looking for their ninja comrade, Raizo. Something falls towards them, a monkey. The monkey hits Kinemon and Kanjuro, knocking them off the dragon. The Samurais say they're okay and will catch up. The Straw Hats continue climbing. The dragon turns back into a drawing. They explore a village. Luffy runs ahead, looking for Sanji, Nami, Brook, and Chopper. Luffy goes to Whale Forest and is attacked by Roddy, a bullmink. Wanda and Carrot stop them. Pedro calls off the Guardians. Luffy meets the Heart Pirates and says Law is also on the island. Wanda explains a recent attack on Zoo and offers to take Luffy to Sanji's group. Riding Wani, Wanda explains Zoo's climate and how rainwater is filtered and distributed. She and Carrot say the rain also brings fish. Wanda tells Luffy about Jack and says his obituary was in the paper, but his death isn't confirmed. Law teleports the rest of Luffy's friends nearby. Wanda leads them to Right Belly Forest. Luffy reunites with Nami and Chopper. Nami tells him what happened to Sanji. They have a feast with the Mink tribe. Luffy tells Zoro not to be rude. He sees Brook again. Brook says Momonosuke is safe, but refuses to leave his room, and warns Luffy not to mention Samurai or Wano Country. Canine Minks interrupt. Luffy tells Chopper that Law is with them. Nami asks about Sanji. Luffy isn't worried because Sanji left a letter, upsetting Nami. Luffy listens to Nami and Chopper's story about escaping the Big Mom Pirates and Wanda's story about how Nami's group saved the Mink tribe. Prince Inuarashi awakens from his coma and wants to meet Zoo's benefactors. They go to meet him. Wanda explains Jack's attack in more detail. Wanda says Jack was searching for Raizo, a Wano ninja. Brook explains why they shouldn't mention Samurai or Wano. Luffy blurts out the ninja's name, and Nami, Usopp, and Brook beat him up. They arrive at the Duke's home and meet Sicilian, who thanks them. They hear about a weapon Jack used. Luffy gets angry hearing the weapon was made by Caesar. Inuarashi changes the subject to when he met Shanks. Luffy is about to talk about him, but the Duke falls asleep. Wanda finishes recalling Jack's devastation and the Mink tribe's salvation. Luffy promises to make Jack and Kaido pay. Wanda doubts Jack is dead. They decide to visit Nekomamushi and the Guardians in Whale Forest. Nami and Brook explain what happened when Big Mom's ship arrived. 2 days before Luffy's group, they tell them about Big Mom's upcoming tea party, a political wedding between Sanji and Charlotte Pudding. Sanji, after ensuring Nami, Brook and Chopper's safety, left with the Big Mom pirates to settle things with his family.
Now Luffy is initially excited about another crewmate. Brook says they'll become Big Mom's subordinates if Sanji marries her daughter. Luffy is displeased. Chopper explains Sanji might sever ties with them to avoid this. Luffy worries Sanji might quit, which he considers worse than sailing under Big Mom. Luffy decides to find Sanji. Despite his crew's objections, Pedro brings Luffy to Peakum's. Luffy asks about the arranged marriage. Peakum says Sanji's father and Big Mom arranged it to finalize an alliance, and that the Vinsmoke family is a family of killers. Peakum tells Luffy about Germa 66, commanded by the Vinsmokes and Sanji's father. Luffy says he wants the Big Mom pirates as his underlings. Peakum reminds him of Big Mom's power. Peakum explains Sanji can't refuse the invitation because someone close to him would be killed. Luffy asks how the Big Mom pirates know so much about Sanji. Peakum says it's because of the Four Emperors' power. Peakum says the Merrick Sanji leave the Straw Hats and join the Big Mom pirates. Luffy doesn't like this. Peakum says he'll return to the Big Mom pirates when he recovers. Luffy tells Peakum to take him to the tea party to find Sanji.
Luffy finds Zoro listening to the conversation. Luffy assumes Zoro is worried about Sanji. They meet Nekomamushi, who greets them warmly. Luffy says he'll bring Sanji back and tells Law not to attack Kaido until he returns. Nekomamushi decides to party with Luffy's group. The next morning they hear a bell and realize Ken-Emin and Kanjuro have arrived. They rush to find them, fearing what will happen when the Mink tribe meets the samurais. They intercept Ken-Emin and Kanjuro and Momonosuke as they arrive at Corral City and try to hide them. However, as Nekomamushi and Inuarashi fight, Ken-Emin and Kanjuro reveal themselves. The Mink tribe welcomes the samurais and reveals Raizo is safe. The Straw Hats are stunned. The Minks knew about Raizo and hid him despite being attacked. Momonosuke stops Inuarashi and Nekomamushi's quarrel. Ken-Emin reveals Momonosuke is not his son, but Kozuki, Oden's son. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi take the Straw Hats, Law, and the samurais to Raizo. Luffy and the other male pirates are excited to meet him, expecting a stereotypical ninja. They are shocked by Raizo's appearance, but still ask him to perform tricks. Raizo refuses until they sulk, then uses some ninja arts, entrancing them. Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper accompany Ken-Emin, Kanjuro, and Raizo outside the whale tree, expressing sorrow at Zo's state. Robin deciphers the red poneglyph. Nekomamushi calls them back in. Inuarashi explains the 4 road poneglyphs and how they lead to Laugh Tale. Nekomamushi reveals Kaido and Big Mom each have one. Luffy is eager to fight them. The Straw Hats are surprised. Nekomamushi reveals Momonosuke's ancestors created the poneglyphs. The samurai explains Momonosuke never inherited the knowledge because of Oden's execution by Kaido and the Wano shogun. The Straw Hats learn Oden was part of Roger's crew and was on Laugh Tale. The samurai explains Oden's will to open Wano Country and their journey to gather allies to fight Kaido and the shogun. Ken-Emin asks for Luffy's help. Luffy declines, saying Momonosuke should ask. Momonosuke declares his will to fight Kaido and asks for Luffy's help. Luffy accepts and forms an alliance with the samurai and the Mink tribe. After leaving the secret room, Luffy learns Inuarashi and Nekomamushi traveled with Oden and were on Whitebeard's and Roger's ships. He also learns the Whitebeard pirates were defeated and forced into hiding by the Blackbeard pirates a year after the Summit War. The alliance splits up to accomplish different tasks and meet at Wano. Nami, Chopper, and Brook accompany Luffy to rescue Sanji. Robin will copy Big Mom's poneglyph. They feel Zoa shaking and hear Zunisha crying. Luffy hears Zunisha's voice, but his own voice can't reach it. Momonosuke says he can hear the elephant and Luffy urges him to command it to drive Jack away. Jack's fleet is sunk.
Luffy prepares to leave Zoo.
He checks on Peckham's and sees his house collapsed. Peckham says he used his devil fruit powers to save himself. Luffy carries Peckham's and departs Soas with the Sanji retrieval team, including Pedro. Everyone except the Straw Hats left behind is shocked when Luffy jumps off Zunisha with his party, sailing to Whole Cake Island. Luffy scolds Nami, Chopper, and Brook for being less energetic. Nami says they're recovering from Luffy's Zoa stunt. Carrot is revealed to have snuck aboard. Luffy lets her stay. Luffy insists on cooking after Nami threatens to charge them for food. While cooking, they learn from a newspaper about the Blackbeard pirates' attack on the Revolutionary Army's headquarters on Baltigo. Luffy is shocked by his father's appearance and worries about Sabo. Pedro says if the revolutionaries were defeated, it would be in the newspaper. Luffy causes a fire. After a storm, Luffy presents his dish, which no one enjoys. They have a food shortage. Days later, they are famished and overheated. Luffy catches a giant fish. He eats the toxic skin and gets food poisoning. They enter Big Mom's waters and are approached by a Germa 66 ship. Sanji's siblings, Yanji and Reiju, approach. Reiju sucks the poison out of Luffy's mouth, reviving him. Luffy thanks Reiju. Reiju says the Vinsmoke family has been searching for Sanji. Luffy wants Reiju to return Sanji, but she and Yanji sail away. They dock at Cacao Island. Luffy and Chopper explore and eat at a cafe. A policeman tries to arrest them. Charlotte Pudding, the cafe owner, defends them. They go to her home, where she offers them food. Luffy accidentally reveals his name. They learn Pudding is Sanji's betrothed. She's surprised they're from the Straw Hat crew. Pudding explains about the Charlotte family and her thoughts on Sanji. They are shocked Sanji turned her down. Pudding shows them a secret route to Whole Cake Island and tells them where to meet her, promising to bring Sanji. They leave when guards arrive for Pudding and return to the Sunny. Peckhams is gone, and there's a message telling them to turn back. Luffy decides to continue, leaving Cacao Island. Luffy wants to rescue Peckhams, but Pedro dissuades him. They sail on Pudding's route and reach the next island, but Nami stays away. A giant aquatic centipede attacks the Sunny. They battle a swarm of giant ants, before being trapped in frozen syrup. Pedro says the ants ate his ship in the past. He explains, he traveled with Peckhams as a pirate and came to Total Land searching for Potolis, but they were defeated.
He says Inwarashi and Nekomamushi showed him the road poneglyph on Zou, so they must believe he can follow in Roger's footsteps.
They need Big Mom's road Potolis. He offers to steal it while the others rescue Sanji. Luffy agrees. The ants return. They reach Whole Cake Island. They dock at the southwest coast and split into two groups. Pedro and Brook, to find Big Mom's road Potolis, and Luffy's group, to find Sanji. Luffy sees someone who looks like Sanji in the forest. Luffy, Chopper, and Carrot run after him, with Nami following. He disappears. They enter the woods. Distracted by the sweets, they are almost eaten by a talking crocodile. Nami wants to turn back, but Luffy continues searching for Sanji. They encounter a man with a giant head buried in the ground. Luffy encounters Brule, Big Mom's 8th daughter, disguised as him. They fight, matching each other's blows. They tell the others to look for Sanji. Nami, Chopper, and Carrot return to where Luffy is fighting Brule, chased by Randolph. Brule goes with them while Luffy runs the other way. Luffy tries to tell them he's not with them, but Brule stops him. Night falls. Luffy gathers multiple bound fake versions of Sanji, Pudding, Nami, Chopper, and Carrot. Luffy says he found them all, but they're acting strangely. He asks whose idea it was to multiply. Luffy finds the real Nami among the fakes. She berates his logic and explains what happened with Brule. Interrogating Pound, a buried man. They learn about a toll paid to Big Mom and her devil fruit power to give life to things. Pound reveals he's one of Big Mom's discarded husbands. Charlotte Cracker, Big Mom's 10th son, appears. Luffy and Nami confront Cracker and are ambushed by Randolph. Cracker knocks Randolph over. They see Brule showing captured Carrot and Chopper in a mirror before shattering it. Chopper reveals he and Carrot are unharmed. Cracker tries to kill Pound, but Luffy blocks his sword and kicks Cracker's arm. Luffy battles Cracker, but is sent flying into a tree homie. Nami tells Luffy to retreat, but he refuses and attacks with Elephant Gun. Cracker overwhelms Luffy with swordsmanship, devil fruit abilities, and armament haki, sending Luffy through tree homies. Luffy attacks with Hawk Gatling, but Cracker counters with haki-imbued shields. Cracker slams Luffy into the ground, berating him for taking Sanji from a royal lifestyle. Luffy gets angry at Cracker for saying Sanji would say he never wanted to see the Straw Hats again. Luffy activates Gear 4 and sends Cracker flying with Kongun. Luffy uses another Kongun and shatters Cracker's biscuit armor. The real Cracker emerges, cutting Luffy's arm with Pretzel. Cracker creates multiple biscuit soldiers. Luffy attacks them, but Cracker attacks Luffy from behind.
The battle lasts 11 hours. Luffy fights, runs, and eats Cracker's biscuit soldiers. Cracker is exasperated. Luffy uses another Gear 4 variation, Tank Man, full version. Cracker tries to pierce Luffy, but Luffy sucks Cracker into his body and sends him flying into Sweet City. He rests on King Bomb's head with Nami, traveling to Big Mom's castle. Luffy returns to normal size. They encounter the Vinsmoke carriage and see Sanji. Luffy asks Sanji to return. Sanji kicks Luffy off the carriage and tells him to leave. Luffy refuses. Sanji repeatedly kicks Luffy until he collapses. Sanji returns to his family. Luffy gets up and yells that he knows Sanji didn't mean what he said. Luffy says he'll wait for Sanji and starve if he doesn't return, refusing to eat food not made by Sanji.
The Vinsmoke family leaves. The weather changes into a storm. An army marches towards them. Luffy fights the army. He defeats most of them but is overwhelmed by Charlotte Opera's cream. Charlotte Mondor puts Luffy into a book, preventing him from seeing the real world. Charlotte Counter and Charlotte Cadenza punch Luffy, sending him crashing down. The Big Mom pirates head back to Sweet City. Counter stomps on Luffy's head. Luffy and Nami are imprisoned in a book in the prisoner library. Big Mom speaks to them through a Denten Mushi. Luffy shouts at her. Big Mom says he broke his promise to battle her by not bringing his entire crew. Luffy says he's there to get Sanji, but will fight her if she shows up. Big Mom says he's nothing compared to her, and could have him killed without showing up. She says if they give up on rescuing Sanji, she'll free them after the wedding and threatens them if they interfere. Big Mom recalls Luffy giving her treasure, including the Tamate Bako, and says she liked it so much she'd forgive the Fishman Island incident, and plans to open it at the wedding. Luffy tells her to be quiet, saying the wedding won't happen, and asks to speak to Pudding. Big Mom inquires about Lola, saying Lola running away ruined her plans to become Pirate King. Luffy says Lola didn't need to be a pawn and challenges Big Mom, saying he'll get Sanji back and defeat her. Pudding comes to the prisoner library and talks to Luffy and Nami. She apologizes for her siblings and for not meeting them on the coast. She says Sanji proposed to her, but she knows he doesn't want to marry her and she won't marry him. She whispers she'll kill Sanji at the wedding and Luffy and Nami won't leave alive. Pudding leaves crying and insulting them. Luffy struggles to break free, determined not to die. Jinbe arrives and defeats Opera. Luffy and Nami are overjoyed. Jinbe frees them by burning the book. Luffy collapses from hunger, but gets up as Big Mom's soldiers charge in. Luffy runs through the castle, looking for Sanji, strangling Counter and demanding Sanji's location. Reiju grabs Luffy and hides him in the infirmary. Reiju says Sanji knows about Pudding's deception and tried to convince him to leave, but he's worried about the Barati chefs and the Straw Hats. Luffy jumps out of the castle and returns to where he promised to wait for Sanji. He walks through Sweet City in the rain. He reaches the promised place and falls asleep. Luffy wakes up to the smell of Sanji's bento box. Sanji gives it to him. Luffy eats happily. Luffy asks Sanji to leave. Sanji explains why he can't. Luffy punches Sanji and demands the truth. Sanji cries, saying he wants to return but doesn't want his family to die. Luffy supports him, saying they'll ruin the wedding together. Chopper's group contacts Luffy and Sanji through a mirror shard. Luffy explains his intent to ruin the wedding. Jinbe explains Beija's backstory and his plot against Big Mom and proposes an alliance with Beija. At Beija's hideout, Luffy and Sanji are greeted by Vito, who asks them to bathe. Luffy and Brook raid Bagane's fridge for milk. Luffy's lost tooth heals, and Brook's cracked skull heals. They meet Beija. Negotiations are hectic. Luffy sees Caesar Clown and wants to attack Beija for hurting Pecoms. Jinbe stops the fight, saying they have a common enemy, Big Mom. Luffy asks Beija about his plan. Beija says he has a perfect one. Beija explains his plan. Luffy will be the bait to distract Big Mom's subordinates when Beija triggers her tantrum. Despite Nami's and Chiffin's protests, Luffy agrees. Luffy, Beija, and Caesar agree their alliance ends when Big Mom is dead and they've escaped. Luffy asks Beija for a favor to place a mirror in the wedding cake so he can enter the venue. Luffy gathers animals from the seducing woods and has brutally turned them into Luffy duplicates. Beija takes the alliance to the tea party in his castle. Luffy sleeps for 3 days. Jinbe wakes him up with food. They prepare to charge in when they hear the signal. After Katakuri's assassination attempt on Sanji fails, multiple Luffy duplicates emerge from the wedding cake. Chaos erupts. Luffy identifies himself when Big Mom calls out to him. Luffy tries to attack Carmel's photo, but Katakuri immobilizes him. Jinbe frees Luffy with black tea. Jinbe tells Big Mom he's leaving her crew and joining the Straw Hats. Luffy is worried Big Mom will take Jinbe's lifespan. Big Mom's power has no effect on Jinbe. Luffy cheers when Jinbe toasts his departure. Big Mom tries to attack Luffy and Jinbe with Prometheus, but they evade. Luffy is happy to see Brook destroying Carmel's picture. Big Mom doesn't scream after 3 seconds. Beija pretends to pin Luffy down. Brook is decapitated but survives and whispers to Luffy that Big Mom is confused. Their best chance is to show her the broken photo again. Beija questions the plan, but when Katakuri approaches, Beija sees he foresaw a horrific future and regains confidence. Beija confronts Katakuri. Luffy grabs Carmel's broken portrait. Katakuri pins Luffy down. Luffy stretches his arms and shows the portrait to Big Mom, causing her scream. Luffy shields his ears. Luffy watches Beija, Vito, and Gotti fire Cax launchers at Big Mom. Big Mom's scream detonates the rockets. Caesar flies in with the escape mirror. Beija signals Luffy to retreat. Big Mom's scream shatters the mirror. They are trapped. Beija transforms into a giant fortress. Luffy and his group flee to the fortress. The Alliance and the Vinsmoke family retreat inside. Beija explains their dire situation. Luffy is concerned when Beija leads from the fortress being damaged by Big Mom's attacks. He tries to attack Big Mom's but is held back. Beija hatches an escape plan. The Vinsmoke family covers for the Alliance. When Reiju is overwhelmed, Luffy and Sanji block Big Mom's attack. Sanji drags Luffy away. Big Mom taunts Luffy, calling him spineless. Luffy activates Gear 4 and tries to strike Big Mom, who blocks it. Luffy tells Big Mom he'll come after her after Kaido is defeated. Luffy, Sanji, and the Vinsmoke family are subdued by the Charlotte family. Big Mom is going to execute them, but the Tamatea Bako explodes at the base of the Whole Cake Chateau, causing the castle to topple over. As the castle collapses, Luffy's group, Beja's crew, and the Vinsmoke family escape. The Sanji retrieval team and the Fire Tank pirates meet at the northwest part of Whole Cake Island and part ways. The rest head for the Thousand Sunny. Luffy sees King Baum alive. Nami says she has part of Big Mom's Vivre card and uses it to control King Baum. Big Mom riding Zeus catches up to them. Big Mom uses Napoleon to cut off part of King Baum. Luffy notes the attack is similar to Dory and Brogy's. Big Mom prepares to attack again. Nami diverts Zeus's attention with thunderclouds, causing him to drop Big Mom. They reach the seducing woods. Big Mom orders the tree homies to stop them, but King Baum charges through. Prometheus burns King Baum. Luffy attacks Prometheus, but can't harm him with haki punches. Genbat stuns Prometheus with water. Big Mom pirates clash with the Sanji retrieval team. Luffy stops Carrot from separating from the group. Nami uses a lightning bolt on the Big Mom pirates. Big Mom is barely affected. She eats through the ground and continues chasing. Pudding and Chiffon approach. Luffy is angry to see Pudding. Chiffon asks Sanji to help make a cake to satiate Big Mom's eating disorder. Sanji agrees. Big Mom attacks again. Sanji goes to Kakado Island with Pudding and Chiffon. Luffy's group flees to the Thousand Sunny. Pudding uses her devil fruit to send memories into the homies, allowing the Straw Hats to reach the coast. The Sanji retrieval team reaches the ship, but clashes with Perospero and Katakuri. Luffy finds Chopper and Brook trapped in candy. Perospero sends a candy Iron Maiden at them. Luffy destroys it with Red Hawk. Luffy clashes with Katakuri. Perospero traps the ship in candy. Luffy sees Pedro's suicidal explosion. They prepare to leave. Katakuri subdues Carrot. Luffy grabs Katakuri and drags him into the Mirror world, smashing the mirror to the Sunny. Luffy and Katakuri fight. Katakuri says he outmatches Luffy in speed and power. Luffy attacks with Hawk Gatling. Katakuri counters with Mochi Tendrils. Katakuri says he can do anything Luffy can do better. Luffy says Rubber will never lose to Mochi. Katakuri dodges Hawk Stamp and kicks Luffy into a wall. Luffy uses Elephant Gun. Katakuri creates a larger Mochi Fist and pushes Luffy into the wall. Katakuri orders Broly to find another mirror on the Sunny to set it on fire. Mascarpone and Mascarpone arrive with a mirror. Luffy rushes towards them. Katakuri stops him. Katakuri attacks Luffy, warning him not to touch his siblings. Luffy dodges and contacts Nami through a mirror shard, telling her to break all the mirrors on the Sunny. Luffy is concerned when he hears Big Mom sunk the Sunny. The Big Mom pirates are puzzled by the breaking mirrors. Luffy's team contacts him, saying they survived. Luffy distances himself from the Big Mom pirates. His team tells him to find a mirror to Cacao Island. Katakuri assaults Luffy. Luffy covers his mouth so his team doesn't hear him getting hurt. He tells them to hurry to Cacao Island. Katakuri prepares to kill him. Luffy says he won't die. Luffy struggles against Katakuri. Broly brags about Katakuri's strength. Luffy tries to punch her. Katakuri grabs his fist and slams him into a wall. Katakuri attacks with his trident, Mogura. Katakuri notes Luffy dodges his strikes better than anyone, and uses his awakened power to trap Luffy. Luffy prepares to use Gear 4. Katakuri prevents Luffy from activating Gear 4 by engulfing him with Mochi. Katakuri turns the Mirror world into Mochi, and piles it onto Luffy to suffocate him. Katakuri eats snacks. Luffy escapes by eating the Mochi, and finds Katakuri eating in a Mochi house. Katakuri is furious, and attacks Luffy, overwhelming him with armament haki. Luffy kicks Katakuri's jaw. Katakuri is shocked Luffy figured out his weakness. Luffy activates Gear 4, and strikes Katakuri with Kongun, which Katakuri blocks. Luffy gains the upper hand, landing Gear 4 attacks. Katakuri regains his composure, dodges Luffy's attacks, and lands a powerful strike, knocking Luffy back. With Luffy losing the advantage, Katakuri goes on the offensive. When Katakuri mentions Luffy will deflate, Luffy retreats. Katakuri wears off as he flees. He grabs Broly and escapes the Mirror world. Luffy and Broly arrive at Nuts Island, and find Big Mom rampaging. Big Mom spots Luffy. Luffy runs while carrying Broly. Perospero blocks him with a candy wall. Luffy's gigant pistol has no effect. He dodges an attack from Amande, jumps over the wall, and continues running. Luffy escapes Big Mom and travels between islands, through the Mirror world. Hiding with Broly, Luffy wonders how to defeat Katakuri. He remembers Rayleigh's lessons, and wants to see into the future. He declares he'll surpass Katakuri. Luffy confronts Katakuri again. Katakuri pummels Luffy, but Luffy gets back up. Luffy calms his mind, and remembers Rayleigh's words. He starts to see into the future. Katakuri tries to deter Luffy, but Luffy refuses to give up. Katakuri sees Luffy's observation, haki improving, and tries to end the battle quickly. A projectile pierces Luffy's thigh, breaking his balance. Katakuri lands a devastating blow. Luffy cries out in pain. Katakuri kicks him into a wall, and tries to strike him with his mochi spear, but Luffy dodges. Katakuri unleashes a barrage of mochi fists. Luffy thinks back to his training with Rayleigh, and gets back up. Flampa tries to shoot Luffy with her silent blowgun, but he dodges. Katakuri injures himself and reveals his face to Flampa, berating her interference. Luffy and Katakuri unleash Conqueror's Haki, knocking out Flampa and her subordinates. They resume their battle. They trade blows. Luffy activates Snake Man. With increased speed and homing attacks, Luffy lands more hits on Katakuri. Katakuri counters with spiked mochi attacks. They trade more blows, and claim they'll end the battle before a massive clash. After the clash, Luffy's Gear 4 wears off, and he falls into the impact hole. Luffy climbs out. Katakuri asks if Luffy will return to defeat Big Mom. Luffy says he will. Katakuri collapses. Luffy covers Katakuri's fanged mouth with his hat, and walks away. Capom's disguised approaches with Brule, and says he'll help Luffy escape to honor Pedro's sacrifice. Traveling to the Cacao Island mirror, Peckham's explains the Solong form, and his escape plan. Exiting the Miro world, Peckham's hides Luffy between himself and Brule. Peckham's transforms but is attacked, exposing Luffy. Sanji grabs Luffy and tries to escape, but they are smashed into the ground by Charlotte Yuen. Germa 66 arrives. Sanji's siblings shield them from bullets. Sanji is told to escape with Luffy, who is unconscious. Sanji kicks through Big Mom pirates. Brule reveals Katakuri's defeat, enraging them. Oven tries to attack Sanji and Luffy, but Ichiji repels him. Sanji and Luffy flee. Yuen tries to attack Sanji again, but Yunji interferes. Sanji is shot at by snipers, and one fires a missile. Niji grabs Sanji before the explosion, and takes down pirates with his sword. Niji throws Sanji and Luffy towards the Thousand Sunny, sending them over the Big Mom pirates' fleet. Sanji sees their ship. Luffy and Sanji return to the Sunny. Chopper tends to Luffy's injuries. Smoothie's fleet besieges them, but Judge rescues them. As the Sunny passes Judge's castle, Judge asks Luffy why he risked his life to rescue Sanji. Luffy thanks him. Enemy ships approach. Datsumi appears and attacks the enemy. The Sun pirates clear a path. Luffy thanks them. Aladdin asks Luffy to take care of Jinbe. The Sunny is intercepted by the Queen Mama Chanter. Wadatsumi saves the Sunny by switching it with the Sun pirate's ship, and hiding the Sunny in his mouth. Oven attacks Wadatsumi, forcing him to spit out the Sunny. The Sun pirates hold back the Big Mom pirates. Jinbe stays behind to help them. Luffy agrees, but tells Jinbe to survive and meet them at Wano. Jinbe joins his former crew in battle. The Sunny group sails away from Cacao Island. The Big Mom pirates can't pursue. Sunny group escapes Totoland. Sanji cooks a meal. Sanji realizes he received a raid suit from Niji. Luffy and Chopper tell him not to throw it. Carrot gets a newspaper. Luffy misreads his new bounty. He thinks it is 150 million berries. However, Brook corrects him and says that it is actually 1,500,000,000 berries. Sunny sails towards Wano Country. The group learns of the Leveille. They encounter unusual weather, an octopus. After a bumpy ride and climbing a waterfall, they find a whirlpool. Luffy helps his group escape, but is held back by the octopus. Luffy and the Sunny wash up on a beach at Curry. Luffy wakes up when a crab pinches him. He encounters a Kominu and a baboon with a katana. The Kominu and baboon fight. Two beasts, pirate scouts, spot Luffy and the Sunny and attack. Luffy easily defeats them and saves a little girl they captured. One pirate orders the baboon, Haimaniwa no to attack Luffy, but Luffy stops him with a glare. Tama the little girl knocks out the pirate and tames Hiyamaru with Kibi Dango from her cheek. Tama explains where they are and what happened to her. She takes the Sunny to a safe location and offers Luffy food. At her master's house, she makes rice dishes. Her master is angry Luffy ate the rice. She rarely gets. She gave it to Luffy as thanks. She gets sick from contaminated river water from Kaido's factories. Her master says she stays in Curry, waiting for Ace, who promised to return. Luffy says Ace died. Tama becomes upset and passes out. Hitetsu berates Luffy and tells him about Ace's visit and Tama's village's destruction. Luffy offers to take Tama to a doctor. Hitetsu tells him to look for his allies. Luffy changes clothes and takes the sword Night-Eye Kitetsu. Hitetsu tries to stop him, hits face but fails. Komichio gives them a ride through the bamboo forest. Tama accuses Luffy of lying about Ace and explains his promise. They enter a wasteland. Tama explains a terrible environment caused by the beasts, pirates, and falls unconscious again. Luffy sees Zoro saving a woman from Kaido's thugs. They reunite, but are confronted by Hawkins. Hawkins reads Luffy and Zoro's fortune, saying they have a 19% chance of surviving the month. Zoro notices the sword Luffy is carrying and asks to hold it, but Luffy decides to use it. Hawkins' men attack. Luffy punches instead of using the blade. A giant lizard tries to bite Luffy. Luffy dodges, grabs it and throws it at Hawkins, who catches it with his straw sword. Zoro attacks Hawkins with a flying slash to the face, but the damage is redirected to one of his men. Hawkins explains his Wara Wara no Mei and conjures a giant straw entity. He draws a card that makes his men attack each other. Komichio drags Luffy and Zoro away. Hawkins' straw figure pursues them.
Zoro slices it in two. The woman Zoro saved introduces herself as Tsuru. Seeing Tama's condition, she asks them to bring Tama to her tea shop in Okobor Town. Tama is healed by Tsuru's medicine. Tsuru tells her story about Okobor Town. Tsuru is attacked by the Gifter Band. Tama is
abducted by Gazelleman. Luffy, Zoro, Kiku, and Komichio pursue the Gifter to Bakura Town. At the town gates, Luffy yells Tama's name. They are confronted by swordsmen. Luffy knocks them out with Conqueror's Haki. Kiku tells Luffy and Zoro about the town's history. A defeated sumo wrestler is hurled towards them. Luffy catches him. They find a sumo tournament where Urashima is winning. Urashima's men take Kiku to Urashima. Luffy is amazed when Kiku slices off Urashima's top knot. Urashima tries to attack Kiku. Luffy intercepts and engages him in a sumo match. Luffy dodges Urashima's attacks and sends him flying into a building. Many enemies confront them. Luffy fights back, demanding the town boss. Hold'em arrives holding Tama hostage. Hold'em accuses them of being thieves. Kiku warns Luffy not to anger Hold'em. She says Jack rolls curry and attacking Hold'em will have serious repercussions. The headliner Speed arrives with food. Luffy and Zoro decide to steal it. Luffy attacks Hold'em and grabs Tama. Zoro strikes down the beast's pirates escorting the wagon. Luffy, hearing how Hold'em harmed Tama, drops Tama and punches Hold'em with Red Hawk. Luffy grabs Tama again and tries to ride Speed, thinking she is a horse. Speed gets angry, but Tama offers her Kibi Dango. Speed eats it and becomes subservient to Luffy and Tama, carrying them out of Bakura Town to Okobor Town. They pick up Law. They deliver the food to the citizens. Luffy crushes 3 gifters. Tama eats an apple. Luffy promises she won't be hungry again. Law scolds Luffy and Zoro and takes them to the ruins of Odin's castle. Luffy parts ways with Tama but keeps the sword. Luffy, Zoro, Law, Sang, Kiku ride Komachio to the castle ruins. Zoro wanders off and Kiku runs away crying. At the castle, Law shows Luffy gravestones for the Kozuki family, including Kinemon, Momonosuke, Kanjuro, and Raizo. Luffy thinks they're dead, but Kinemon and Momonosuke appear. Kiku returns and embraces Kinemon. Luffy's other crewmates arrive. Law takes them inside to talk. Kinemon reveals he, Momonosuke, Kanjuro, and Raizo escaped Orochi's takeover by traveling 20 years forward in time. Kinemon explains Odin's story, his execution, the rumor about Toki, and what his group did after arriving in the present. Kinemon outlines a plan to attack Onigashima, where Kaido resides, in 2 weeks, explaining the Fire Festival and the decisive battle. He gives them tasks and new clothes and summons Shinobu to guide them. Kaido arrives in Kori. Law alerts Luffy. Luffy sees Kaido above Okobor Town and rushes off, with Law following. Kaido destroys Odin Castle. Luffy attacks Kaido with a Gear 3 attack, knocking him down. Luffy checks on his friends at Odin Castle but finds an injured Speed, who says she tried to save Tama, but Kaido attacked them. Tama's fate is unknown. Law tells Luffy to flee, but Luffy engages Kaido again. Kaido uses his fire breath. Luffy dodges and strikes Kaido with Elephant Gatling, knocking him down again. Kaido enters his human form. Luffy activates Gear 4 and unleashes a barrage of attacks. The attacks are ineffective. Kaido retaliates with Reime Hake, knocking Luffy unconscious. Kaido orders his men to imprison Luffy to break his spirit and make him a subordinate. Kaido's men surround Luffy. Luffy instinctively knocks some of them out with Conqueror's Hake. Luffy is taken to a prison at Odon and thrown into a cell next to Kid. Luffy and Kid swear revenge on Kaido. A few days later, Luffy and Kid compete over who can do more work at the prisoner mine. Dobon confronts them about Kibi Dango rations. He has his hippo put them in its mouth. Luffy and Kid knock out Dobon and his hippo. Luffy carries an injured old man. The next day, the old man thanks Luffy, who gives him meal tickets. Raizo appears beside Luffy and says he found the keys to Luffy's Seastone handcuffs, but they're heavily guarded. Raizo asks Luffy to wait. Karabu approaches Luffy and tries to ally with him to escape. Luffy rejects him, telling him to ally with Kid. Karabu starts telling Luffy about the rumors of how Kid lost an arm. Kid appears and interrupts him. Luffy and Kid argue over who will defeat Kaido. News of Kid's escape is announced. Alpacaman torments Luffy. Luffy sees a guard attacking High Goro and attacks the guard, causing an uproar. The warden attacks Luffy. Luffy tries to escape. Luffy and Goro are brought before Queen, who tries to convince Luffy to join the Beast Pirates. Luffy and Goro are sentenced to fight in death matches called the Sumo Inferno. They wear collars that will behead them if they leave the ring. Their handcuffs are removed for combat. Luffy knocks out the first opponents with Conqueror's Haki. He tries to learn Advanced Armament Haki. Luffy and Goro are confronted by Alpacaman and Medillaman. Luffy tells Goro how to dodge their attacks. Luffy tells Goro about learning Advanced Armament Haki to break through Kaido's scales. Goro demonstrates the technique and defeats Alpacaman. Luffy asks Goro to teach him. Goro tries to teach Luffy, but Luffy keeps defeating opponents without progress. The Sumo Inferno is put on hold for the night. Luffy and Goro are left in the ring. Luffy knocks out nearby guards with Conqueror's Haki and tells Goro why he wants to defeat Kaido. Raizo and Caribou approach. Caribou wants to be Luffy's subordinate. Luffy accepts Goro, reveals potential allies in the prison. Luffy wants to rally them.
Luffy and Hyugoro eat Oshiruko, stolen from Queen and overeat. The next day, they prepare for the next matches. Queen turns on the filming pawn Tainishi. Luffy witnesses Shin Motsuki Yasui's execution. Luffy says no one should laugh when someone dies. Luffy Ogoro explains a side effect of the smile fruits. Luffy cheers for his crewmates causing chaos at the execution site. Kid is recaptured trying to rescue Kamazo, who is revealed to be Killer. Queen subjects Kid and Killer to water torture and threatens to keep them submerged until Luffy and Hyugoro die. Luffy tries to attack Queen, but Queen catches his punch and throws him aside. They hear a loud noise outside the gate. Luffy is surprised to see an amnesiac Big Mom breaking into the prison. Big Mom and Queen argue about Oshiruko. Luffy tells them to pull Kid and Killer out of the water. Luffy is surprised Big Mom overpowers Queen. He is relieved Kid and Killer are saved. Luffy admits he ate Big Mom's Oshiruko. Big Mom gets angry at Luffy and pushes him and Hyugoro out of the ring. Luffy removes their collars. Hyugoro stays in Big Mom's path, hoping Luffy will become stronger. Luffy prepares to face Big Mom. Luffy realizes he used the same technique Rayleigh used to remove Kami's exploding collar. He's not sure how to activate it at will. He tries to flow Haki through his hands, but Big Mom sends him and Hyugoro crashing into a wall. Hyugoro says he used Haki just in case. Hyugoro tells Luffy more about Advanced Armament Haki. Big Mom separates them and pursues Luffy into the prisoner iron factory. Luffy leads Big Mom back to where he started. Queen attacks Big Mom again. Big Mom regains her memories and falls asleep. Queen and his subordinates take Big Mom to Onigashima, but Banuki leads the remaining crew in the prison. With communications cut off, Luffy decides to take down Babanuki and his forces and take over the prison. Luffy fights the Beast's pirates and works on advancing his armament Haki. Babanuki orders the prisoners to subdue Luffy. They obey. Luffy wonders why they say they have no hope, having failed to rebel 20 years ago. Kawamatsu encourages Luffy to tell the prisoners about hope. Barizo frees Kawamatsu. Kawamatsu reunites with Chopper and Kiku. Luffy and his group fight the Beast's pirates. They are cornered by mummy virus-infected prisoners. Luffy makes contact with them and ignites their spirit, saying their infected situation is no different from their life as slaves and promising to liberate Wano. Babanuki prepares to use an excitement shell. Luffy's advanced observation Haki allows him to tangle Babanuki's elephant trunk, causing the shell to explode inside Babanuki. After the prison takeover, Luffy's condition worsens. Chopper treats him. Luffy reunites with Tamil and Momonosuke. Luffy makes Momonosuke angry by calling him useless. Chopper develops a cure and treats everyone. The 4 Yakuza bosses threaten Luffy for speaking casually to Hyugoro, but Hyugoro vouches for him. The fire festival draws closer. Luffy continues training his armament Haki with Hyugoro. Luffy learns advanced armament Haki and returns to Foosha Village with Tamil and Chopper 2 days before the battle. Luffy gets new armor from Hitsu. He wonders about Jinbe's fate but is sure he'll arrive. The day before the raid on Onigashima, Luffy speaks with Kinemon. Luffy practices his advanced armament Haki on a tree. On the Fire Festival, the Straw Hats, Heart Pirates, and Kid Pirates arrive at Tokage Port and battle the Beast's pirates. They rescue Kinemon's group. The Beast's pirates say the rebels were prevented from gathering and that Kaido allied with Big Mom. Luffy, Law, and Kid destroy a Beast's pirates ship. Denjiro arrives with the Ninja Pirate Mink Samurai Alliance allies. Genjiro flees to Onigashima with Momonosuke. Luffy learns Kanjuro is a spy for Orochi. Momonosuke orders the alliance to press forward.
Luffy promises to rescue Momonosuke. A Beast's pirate's ship attacks with long-range cannons. Jinbe arrives, with Jinbe officially part of the crew. The Straw Hats take over the torii in front of Onigashima. They arrive at Onigashima with the rebels. Luffy receives a Beast's pirate's disguise from Kinemon. The Kid pirates go ahead into Onigashima. Luffy follows. Some Beast's pirates waste Oshiruko. Luffy gets angry, remembering Tama. He strikes them with a Gear 3 attack. Zoro finds Luffy and berates him. Apu attacks and injures them. Gix attacks Apu. Chaos ensues as a number enters the fray. Luffy, Zoro, Kid, and Killer run to the castle, defending against Apu's attacks by covering their ears. Luffy fights inside Kaido's castle and runs into Ulti and Page 1. Luffy says he'll become Pirate King. Ulti says Kaido will and headbutts Luffy. Ulti sends Luffy crashing but senses he's unharmed and transforms into her Pachycephalosaurus hybrid form. Luffy emerges and rushes towards Ulti and Page 1, grabbing Ulti's horns and slamming her into the ground, then defeating Page 1 with Elephant Gun. Ulti grabs Luffy's arms and prepares to headbutt him. Luffy prepares to use Gear 4. Yamato rushes in and strikes Ulti with his Kanabo, picks Luffy up and runs away, introducing himself and trying to take Luffy to a private spot. Luffy attacks Yamato. Yamato counters. They clash. Yamato takes Luffy to the attic and gets him to talk for 5 minutes. Yamato removes his mask, tells Luffy about his devotion to Odin, and asks him to fight with him to achieve Odin's dream of opening Wano's borders. Yamato reveals why he never left Onigashima and his desire to sail with Luffy's crew. They listen to Kaido's speech and fall out of the attic when the floor collapses. Luffy urges Yamato to show him the way to Momonosuke before he's executed. They fight through the Beast Pirates. Luffy tells Yamato that Momonosuke and his retainers are alive. Luffy removes Yamato's handcuffs which detonate and send them flying to the performance stage. Luffy waits for the Scabbard's attack even though Kaido and Momonosuke are in sight. Big Mom sees Luffy and confronts him. Big Mom mocks Luffy's mission. Luffy says his goal is to bring down both her and Kaido. Kaido transforms into his dragon form and takes the Scabbards to the roof of Skull Dome. Luffy tells Kinemon he'll catch up. Luffy sees Sanji help Shinobu free Momonosuke and worries when King drives Sanji through a wall. Luffy has Yamato help Shinobu protect Momonosuke. Big Mom attacks Luffy, angry at his interference. Luffy realizes he must deal with Big Mom first. At the live stage, Luffy tells Shinobu to trust Yamato. He tries to jump to the roof with Zoro, but Queen prevents them. The other Straw Hats arrive. The crew assembles on the live stage. The samurai fight to open a path. They struggle against a number. Zoro slices its club. Jinbe saves some samurai. Luffy attacks the number with Gear 4 and encounters X-Drake, who struck down another number. Drake offers to join forces. Luffy accepts Drake's help. Luffy and Sanji rush to Kaido. Apu attacks, but they cover their ears. Hatcher arrives. Sanji tells Luffy to ignore him. They are confronted by Briscola. Jinbe helps them. Jinbe escorts Luffy and Sanji to the roof. They get past 2 Shinuko. Sanji separates from Luffy and Jinbe. Luffy and Jinbe run into Oda rebels who build a ladder to the 4th level. At the 4th level, Luffy separates from Jinbe, who stays to hold back Husbaldi, who and his subordinates. At the 5th level, Luffy finds the Mink tribe cleared his way to the roof. He joins Zoro, Law Kid, and Killer, who are preparing to fight Kaido and Big Mom. Luffy checks on Kinemon and his group, who are wounded but alive. Luffy agrees to take Wano's fate upon his shoulders and asks Law to send the Scabbards somewhere safe. Law does so. Luffy dodges Kaido's attack and strikes back with Red Rock, making Kaido bleed, shocking both emperors. Kaido attacks with his club. Luffy avoids the full brunt, but is grazed. Big Mom attacks Luffy with Prometheus. Zoro cuts Prometheus in 2. Kaido attacks Luffy again. Law teleports Luffy. Law berates Luffy. Luffy challenges Law and Kid to a game of chicken. When Big Mom attacks them, they take the attack head-on, they recover and attack Kaido together. Kaido transforms and joins Big Mom in the sky. Kaido uses a roar to unleash wind blades on the worst generation. Luffy dodges and strikes Kaido with Kong Rifle, injuring him. Kaido tries to bite Killer, but Luffy kicks Kaido away with Rhino Schneider. Kaido prepares to use Bolo Breath. Law teleports Luffy in front of Kaido so Zoro can cut Kaido's flames. Big Mom uses 10-man Digizai, Tenjin on Luffy and his allies. Luffy is unharmed due to his rubber body. Kaido hits Luffy with Bolo Breath. Luffy is unscathed, saying his guts protected him, and strikes Kaido with Kong Gatling. Luffy gets exhausted from Gear 4 and reverts, forcing Zoro to protect him from Kaido and Big Mom. Kaido transforms into his human beast form. Luffy recovers from Gear 4 and resumes his fighting. He assaults Kaido and Big Mom, who repeatedly strike him away. The other supernovas discuss separating the emperors. Kaido and Big Mom prepare a combined attack. Luffy sees the shockwave's range and alerts the others. Zoro delays the attack. Law teleports everyone to safety. Luffy punches Kaido, noticing he's weakened and dodging attacks. Kaido counters, knocking Luffy out. Luffy glares at Kaido while unconscious. Kaido notices. Luffy deduces the secret behind Kaido's power after observing his attack and remembering his training with Goro. Luffy, fighting for his Wano friends, learns to coat his body with Conqueror's Haki, defending and counter-attacking without contact. Confident he can hurt Kaido, Luffy tells Law and an unconscious Zoro he'll defeat him. Law leaves with Zoro and Zeus. Kaido clashes with Luffy. Luffy lacks skill with Conqueror's Haki coating and is defeated by Kaido. Unconscious Luffy is thrown off Onigashima and falls into the sea. Kaido says Luffy couldn't become Joy Boy. Luffy uses the voice of all things to tell Momonosuke to tell his crew he'll be back and win against Kaido. He calls the Heart Pirates on the Polar Tang to rescue him. They bring him aboard and remove water from his lungs. He wakes up and demands meat. At Tokage Port, Luffy demands more food after eating the Heart Pirates' stock. Caribou provides months' worth of provisions. Luffy reunites with a sobbing Momonosuke, who witnessed Kiku and Kinemon fall. Luffy tells him to stop crying, transform into his dragon form, and fly him back to Onigashima. Luffy regains his strength. He's amazed to see Momonosuke in his adult dragon form. He asks Momonosuke to fly to Onigashima. Luffy is angry at Momonosuke's fear of heights. Momonosuke overcomes his fear and descends towards Onigashima. Luffy hangs onto his horn. They pass through the castle, shocking everyone. They reach the roof and spot Kaido. Luffy transforms into Snake Man and attacks Kaido with Jet Culverin, striking simultaneously with Yamato. They are happy to see each other. Kaido transforms into his dragon form, preparing to face them. Luffy stands above Momonosuke, confirming his name and dream to Kaido. Momonosuke barely dodges Kaido's attack. Luffy takes the first strike, telling Momonosuke to bite Kaido, hitting Kaido with Elephant Gun. Luffy transmits a message to all of Onigashima, declaring he'll defeat Kaido. Kaido transforms into his human beast form, swings his Kanobo, and Luffy meets it with his punch, both using Conqueror's Haki, splitting the sky above Onigashima. After the sky-splitting clash, Luffy tells Yamato to take Momonosuke and flee, wanting a 1v1 with Kaido. They resume fighting, using Conqueror's Haki infusion, trading blows. Luffy sends Kaido back with Rock Gun, falling back himself. They get up, laughing, saying the fight is finally fun. Kaido drinks alcohol, saying he must become stronger and acknowledging Luffy's power. Luffy strikes at Kaido, who goes through Shuron Haki due to the alcohol. In Warai Jogo, Kaido hits Luffy with Ragnaraku, cracking Onigashima's roof. In Okikomi Jogo dragon form, Kaido laments over Onigashima's damage and uses Tatsumaki Kaifu on Luffy. He shifts to Naki Jogo hybrid form, crying and preparing Reimei Haki. Luffy dodges and kicks Kaido's chin with a Conqueror's Haki-infused kick. Kaido enters Okori Jogo and fires 2 Boro Breath. Luffy meets them with Rock Gatling and Gandari Rasengan. Luffy blocks Kaido's Hasakai with Conqueror's Haki and kicks Kaido's abdomen with a Conqueror's Haki-infused kick, seemingly damaging him. Big Mom is defeated. Luffy and Kaido are in a clash of Haki-infused attacks. Kaido, sensing Big Mom's loss, emits Conqueror's Haki in rage. Luffy is impressed Law and Kid won. Kaido recalls their first meeting, enters Naki Jogo and cries. Luffy enters Snake Man and barrages Kaido with Hydra, saying Kaido's ambition means nothing to him. This is his final Gear 4, and he won't stop until he drives Kaido out of Wano. Kaido can't respond to Hydra. He contemplates how such an attack is impossible due to rubber. He transitions to Ami Jogo. Kaido escapes Hydra using Nuzabito Jogo, an advanced observation Haki. He transforms into his full beast form, grabs Luffy, and flies high. He drops Luffy and fires point-blank Bolo Breath, blasting Luffy through Onigashima. Luffy escapes by transitioning to Boundman and flying back to the top. Kaido recovers, enters hybrid form and uses Satsuriku Jogo to floor Luffy with Arai Haki. Luffy resolves to end it with one hit. He charges at Kaido with another over Kongun. CP0 Agent Guernica grabs Luffy's attacking arm, allowing Kaido to knock Luffy down. Guernica releases just before Kaido hits. Kaido attacks in despair, reliving his duel with Odin being sabotaged. Luffy passes out. Kaido descends to the live floor. After dealing with Guernica, Luffy's body transforms. He smiles.
Luffy monologues about hearing his heartbeat and still standing. He jumps, transforming into Gear 5, awakening his Devil Fruit. He emits Conqueror's Haki, knocking out Beast's pirates on the live floor. He enlarges his arm, grabs Kaido in dragon form, swings him around, and slams him back and forth. Kaido fires Bolo Breath. Luffy grabs the ground,
turning it into rubber, reflecting the attack at Kaido. Kaido asks how Luffy made his body rubber. Luffy stretches his arms through Kaido's eyes and launches himself out with Dash Shutsu Rocket. Luffy launches higher and makes himself giant to step on Kaido. Kaido uses Bolo Breath. Luffy recovers and runs back. Kaido changes to hybrid form and strikes Luffy with Kosanze Ragnaraku, slamming his head through the roof. Kaido says their fight looks like a picture book and believes Luffy is at his end. Luffy's awakened state wears off. Kaido falls to one knee and says he'll tell everyone how valiantly Luffy fought. Luffy rejects this and changes back, saying he's not afraid of dying. Luffy punches Kaido through the face. Kaido gets up and asks Luffy who he is. Luffy says he'll surpass him and become Pirate King. Kaido acknowledges Luffy's spirit and power. He admits he's lost a lot. Kaido uses Gundari Rasengan. Luffy hits Kaido multiple times. Kaido fires Kaifu. Luffy dodges. Luffy grabs a bolt of lightning. Luffy uses Gomu Gomu no Kaminari to throw lightning at Kaido. Kaido sidesteps and slams Luffy, sending him flying. Luffy uses another lightning bolt to propel himself back. Kaido dodges and strikes Luffy's head, saying a strong devil fruit isn't enough. Roger didn't have one. Kaido says only Haki overcomes hurdles and hits Luffy with Daitoku Rame Haki. Luffy grabs Kaido past the storm clouds. Kaido tries to shake Luffy off with Hasaikai, then transforms into his dragon form and uses Tatsumaki Kaifu and Bolo Breath. Luffy hangs on and inflates his other fist to finish Kaido. Kaido sees Luffy's giant fist and envelops himself in fire. Luffy lets go. Kaido says Odin was burned to death, and Wano's people cling to hope for a savior. He says Luffy's fist won't hit him because his fire will vaporize it. Luffy says he knows how to hurt Kaido thanks to Yugoro's teaching. Luffy meets Kaido's Shoryu, Kaido with Bajring Gun. They clash. Kaido commends Luffy but says he can't change the world. He asks what kind of world Luffy wants. Luffy says he wants a world where his friends can eat as much as they want. Luffy's fist tears through Kaido's attack and punches Kaido into the ground in front of the flower capital. Luffy passes out. Kaido sinks into a lava pit. Luffy exits Gear 5 and falls. Yamato catches him and congratulates him and Momonosuke. Kaido's landing destabilizes an underwater volcano, erupting and catching Kaido and Big Mom. A bandaged Luffy smiles, declared the winner. Chopper tends to him and Zoro. Luffy tells Momonosuke not to reveal his name. A week later, Luffy and Zoro wake up and demand meat and booze. Luffy sees Momonosuke's adult form. The crew learns of a festival. Luffy decides to go to the baths first. Momonosuke doesn't reveal his name. Citizens know him as Joy Boy, but believe he left. Luffy enjoys the festival with his crew and the Alliance, Law and Kid's crews. Luffy calls for a toast. Kid tries to attack him. Luffy wraps his arm around Kid and continues celebrating. Kid shows Luffy the newspaper. Shanks, Blackbeard, Luffy, and Buggy are the new 4 emperors. Luffy is shocked to Admiral Ryokuju retreats after Shanks intimidates him. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbe acknowledge the departure, Momonosuke's bravery, and the strong haki they felt. Luffy senses familiarity with the haki. Yamato says he'll stay on Wano. Luffy agrees. Marco says goodbye, having found a ship, the Red Hair Pirates, to take him home. Luffy thanks Marco for Marineford. Marco says Ace would be proud. Robin reveals Pluton is on Wano. Luffy isn't interested. Dama appears with Shinobu, wanting to join the crew when she's stronger. Luffy agrees. A few days later, the Straw Hats depart. Luffy, Kid, and Law sail to separate islands. Law goes northeast. Luffy and Kid draw lots. Luffy loses and goes southeast. Kid talks about Buggy's Cross Guild, with Crocodile and Mihawk supposedly under him. Luffy doubts this. Kid says Cross Guild is putting bounties on Marines. Kid receives poneglyph markings from Law. Kid and Killer talk about finding the man with the burn mark, catching Luffy's attention. The Straw Hats prepare to depart. Momonosuke tackles Luffy. Kidman scolds Luffy. Momonosuke begs Luffy to stay. Luffy gives Momonosuke a flag. He says they're waiting for him and gives him his Jolly Roger, telling him to show it if anyone picks a fight. They set sail. Luffy invites Kidman and Momonosuke and Yamato to join his crew, if they want to be pirates. The Sunny and the Polar Tank set course to Mogura Port. Kid taunts the other captains. Luffy and Law sail their ships over the koi-climbing waterfall with the Kid pirates. The fall breaks one of the Sunny's looms. The Sunny lands at the bottom of Wano's waterfall. Luffy is beaten by Nami and caged. He apologizes and begs to be let out. He's released and learns from the newspaper that Nefertari Vivi is missing, her father Cobra is dead, and Sabo is blamed. Luffy is angry and says Sabo wouldn't do that. He wants to go to Mahrijwa to rescue Vivi. Zoro talks him down, saying it's foolish and they should let Vivi live her life until necessary. Robin says Buggy is now one of the 4 emperors. Luffy thinks it's a mistake. Robin offers more news, but Luffy declines unless it's bad. Luffy reaffirms Sabo's innocence and reveals a dream he shared with Sabo and Ace 12 years ago. The Straw Hats react strongly, from laughter to silence, but support it and want to find the final road poneglyph. Days later, the Straw Hats enter a cold area. Luffy sees a warm eddy, and something inside. Zoro cuts it open. Strong winds blow Chopper and Luffy overboard. A mysterious figure emerges. Child Jewelry Bonnie. Luffy grabs Bonnie. A giant mecha shark attacks, causing them to fall into the ocean. Jinbe saves them, and takes them to a cave on Egghead Island. They dry their clothes. Bonnie says she's a member of the worst generation. Luffy wants food. Bonnie says there are no restaurants. This is Future Island Egghead Vegapunk's laboratory. Bonnie says she's there to avenge Vegapunk turning her father into a cyborg. Luffy, Chopper, Jinbe, and Bonnie enter the cave and reach Egghead's surface, surrounded by futuristic machines. Luffy sees many holographic illusions of creatures and food. Atlas, a Vegapunk satellite, appears. Luffy punches her to see if she's real. She punches him back. He lands against the cooking machine, which makes any food. They eat. Jinbe asks Atlas who she is. She says she's Vegapunk. They believe her. Atlas departs. Luffy finds a machine that gives him new clothes. They all use it. A police pacifista attacks them for using the machine without paying. Luffy moves to counterattack, but Bonnie kicks him away, believing the pacifista is her father, Kuma. Luffy saves her from its laser attack. Bonnie uses her devil fruit to change everyone's ages. The pacifista doesn't recognize them. They talk to Bonnie about Kuma's past. Luffy's group explores Egghead and finds ruins of an old mecha. An old man, the original Vegapunk, appears with half his body inside the mecha due to a failed teleportation. Luffy pulls him out. Vegapunk is floating due to Dom shoes. They try to activate them and blast high into the air. Vegapunk explains about himself and his 6 satellites, including Atlas. Bonnie tries to attack Vegapunk with his beam saber but faints after the beam attracts bugs. Vegapunk talks to Luffy about Momonosuke's dragon transformation, saying it's from his artificial devil fruit. Luffy asks about the mecha. Vegapunk says it's the Iron Giant,
built 900 years ago and attacked Marineford 200 years ago. Vegapunk asks Luffy to take him off Egghead. Vegapunk says his dream is to create free energy, which once powered the Iron Giant. His research made the world government want to eliminate him. Vegapunk asks to sail with Luffy. Luffy agrees because he likes Vegapunk's head. Vegapunk asks Luffy to take Bonnie to the Labo phase before it becomes a war zone. He disappears. Luffy's group heads to the Labo phase and runs into Rob Lucci, who defeated Atlas. Luffy gets angry at what happened to Atlas, who gave him food, and activates Gear 5 to fight Lucci. Lucci activates his awakened leopard Zoan form. They fight. Sentomaru arrives with the Seraphim to counter CP0. Lucci strikes down Sentomaru while talking to Luffy. Sentomaru prevents CP0 from controlling the Seraphim. Luffy uses his environment and awakened abilities to keep Lucci away. Sentomaru tells Luffy to get Vegapunk off Egghead. Luffy joins Chopper, Jinbe, and Bonnie and takes the vacuum rocket to the Labo phase. Bonnie races into the Labo phase to get revenge on Vegapunk. Luffy and Chopper follow. Luffy, Chopper, and Jinbe reunite with Nami, Usopp, Sanji, Robin, and Frankie, but lose track of Bonnie and Vegapunk. Luffy and Chopper look for them, but can't find them. They return to the control room with the other Straw Hats, the 6 Vegapunk satellites, and undercover CP0 agent Vegapunk ally, Stussy, who incapacitated Lucci and Kaku. Satellite Shaka says they lost control of the Frontier Dome. He tells them to find the main Vegapunk. They disperse. Luffy and Zoro stay to recover and watch over Lucci and Kaku. The headset signal cuts out. Luffy goes to Shaka. Shaka says the camera feeds are being cut off, meaning there's an enemy inside the Labo phase. Zoro calls for help. Luffy and Shaka find S-Hawk and S-Bear. The Seraphim attack despite Shaka's orders. Shaka realizes one of the Vegapunks ordered them to attack. Lucci and Kaku propose teaming up with Luffy and Zoro against the Seraphim. Luffy agrees to free them from their Seastone shackles, saying he'll beat them if they go after his friends. Luffy, Gear 4, and Lucci perform a combined attack against S-Bear. Zoro and Kaku attack S-Hawk. The Seraphim are barely affected. Zoro notices their physiology is similar to King's Lunarian tribe. Shaka leaves to find the main Vegapunk. Luffy's group tries to diminish the flames on the Seraphim's back. S-Hawk disappears. Lucci says it's going after weaker targets. Zoro chases S-Hawk. Luffy tells Kaku to go with Zoro and focuses on S-Bear. Luffy asks, is Snake calling her Hancock to undo the petrification on his friends? She agrees. York is found and subdued. The group listens to York's conversation with the 5 elders. York reveals she was captured by the Straw Hats. Luffy says he doesn't fully understand, but will use York as a shield against the Marines. Bonnie says it's a hostage situation. Luffy introduces himself to the 5 elders, says he and his crew are Vegapunk's allies, and asks them to call off the Marine fleet. Robin stops Luffy from revealing too much. Luffy apologizes and asks them nicely to back down. Vegapunk talks to Nami about their next destination. Luffy and Usopp get excited when Vegapunk says one needle points to Elbaf. They plan to escape Egghead using Vegaforce 01 to carry the Sunny over the Marine fleet, and then use a coup to burst. They need to deactivate the Frontier Dome first. Vegapunk tasks Lilith with piloting the robot.
Frankie, Luffy and Bonnie go with her to the robot, and the Sunny, Lilith is happy to leave the island. Luffy and Bonnie say they'll miss the food. Luffy says Sanji will cook for them. Bonnie says she feels better now that she doesn't want Vegapunk dead. Luffy thanks her for stopping crying. She yells at him. They arrive at the Thousand Sunny. Luffy feels an intense presence below, as Kizaru warps onto the island. Vegaforce 01 moves the Sunny. Luffy and his group are carried by it. Kizaru defeats Sentomaru. Kizaru warps to the Labo phase. Luffy notices. His group continues fleeing with the Sunny. He confronts Kizaru alone. They exchange a greeting. Luffy instantly attacks Kizaru, who blocks. Luffy says they're 100 times stronger than 2 years ago. They fight. Luffy Snake Man barrages. Kizaru blocks. Kizaru says Luffy has become a good opponent, and asks why he's helping Vegapunk. Kizaru warps away. Luffy wonders where he went. Kizaru says he doesn't want to kill Vegapunk, and Luffy should stay out of his way. Kizaru warps back and kicks Luffy at the speed of light, launching him through Vegaforce 01, causing it to drop the Sunny, and explode. Luffy flies into the Frontier Dome, causing an explosion, and falls to lower Egghead, passing through the dome again, and getting burned. Just before Kizaru kills Vegapunk, Luffy Gear 5 grabs Kizaru with his giant hand. Luffy lifts Kizaru and throws him off Egghead. Luffy shrinks back to his normal size. Kizaru's clones appear. Luffy is slashed across the cheek. He retreats and takes out the clones in one attack. Luffy sees Usopp, Nami, and Brook being attacked by a Kizaru clone. Another Kizaru clone tries to shoot Vegapunk with a laser. Luffy eats the laser, getting burned. Luffy battles Kizaru. They trade blows. Kizaru says fighting Luffy isn't his job. Luffy says it's his job to keep Kizaru occupied. Kizaru teleports away. Luffy follows. Kizaru tries to intercept Vegapunk. Kizaru prevents Vegapunk from returning to the Labo phase. Vegapunk falls back down. Luffy arrives and stops Kizaru. Kizaru asks how long Luffy can hold his transformation. Kizaru fires a laser. Luffy uses the laser's momentum to spin and strike Kizaru's head. Kizaru is launched through a building. Luffy falls. Luffy is worn out. Jay Garcia Saturn tries to finish him off. Frankie saves Luffy with strong right. Saturn says Luffy and Bonnie's presence is unexpected but inconsequential. Luffy asks for food. Kizaru secretly gives him a pile of food. Saturn orders Marines to cuff Luffy with Sea Stone. Bartholomew Kuma appears, saves Bonnie, and punches Saturn. The Marines report Luffy vanished. Luffy is found near the food dispensers, bloated from overeating. Before the Marines cuff Luffy, they are launched into the air by an explosion. Luffy activates Gear 5 and saves Kuma and Bonnie from Kizaru. He makes the ground rubbery for Sanji, Frankie, Bonnie, Kuma, and Atlas to land safely. The Marines say the island is shaking. Luffy jumps, laughing in his Nika pose. Vegapunk tells Bonnie that Luffy is Sun God Nika. Luffy asks Bonnie why she's crying. She says she was looking for him and didn't realize he was Nika. Luffy asks about her weak punch. She says she tried a rubbery punch and asks him to show her how and avenge Vegapunk, who was stabbed by Saturn. Luffy is surprised. Vegapunk is injured and agrees to avenge him. He uses Dawn Gatling to attack Saturn. Kizaru tries to kill Bonnie and Vegapunk with a laser. Sanji blocks it. Kizaru is dismayed and prepares to face Luffy and Sanji. Vegapunk says he can't move. Luffy reminds him of their promise. Vegapunk says he must protect Egghead and asks Luffy to look after Bonnie. Saturn returns in his beast form and attacks with venom-coated legs. Luffy dodges and tells Sanji to take Vegapunk to safety. Kizaru impales Vegapunk. Sanji protects Vegapunk. Luffy grows huge, grabs Kizaru and Saturn, and says he won't let them escape. Luffy hears Vegapunk's broadcast. He realizes his punches have little effect on Saturn. Saturn and Kizaru attack. Luffy holds them back. Luffy uses Dawn Symbol, pancaking Kizaru and Saturn. He flings them away. Kizaru crashes into a marine ship. Saturn changes trajectory and flies back at Luffy. Luffy dodges. Magic circles appear around Saturn. The other 5 elders appear from the circles in their awakened Zoan forms. Luffy dodges Saturn's attack and sees the sandworm burrowing. The sandworm swallows him. Dory and Brogy arrive and decapitate it, freeing Luffy. Luffy is overjoyed to see them. They are surprised by his Gear 5 appearance, saying it's like a god in Elbaf. They explain the situation. Dory blows his Viking horn. Topman Mercury arrives and says, escape is impossible. He uses Conqueror's Haki, stripping Luffy of his eyes, hat, shoes, cuffs, and scars, which are then restored, and Mercury questions why the Giants are helping Luffy in attacks. The Giants knock Mercury away. Saturn intervenes, saying they will be erased from history along with Luffy, and fires venom balls. Luffy grabs a tree, chips it into a baseball bat, paints it, puts wood lux on it, and puts on a helmet to knock the venom balls back. They explode. Luffy tells the Giants to run, saying the elders are immortal. Jode Peter uses his vortex mouth. As Luffy throws a building into it, neutralizing him, Luffy runs out of stamina and returns to his regular form. Brogy gives him Hakarl, revitalizing him. Mercury reappears. Luffy tries Red Rock, striking Mercury's head. Mercury's skin is very durable, hurting Luffy's hand. Warcury's flames catch up to Dory and Brogy. Luffy enters Gear 5 again, and tries to stop a Warcury. Brogy says attacking Warcury won't work. Luffy strikes Warcury again, hurting his hand. They flee. Warcury and John Peter abandon their pursuit. Luffy, Dory, and Brogy reach the giant's ship as it departs Egghead. Luffy likes the ship but is concerned about Usopp and Chopper. He eats a pre-made meal and asks for more. Marcus Mars chases the ship, firing an energy beam and setting part of it on fire. Mars declares they won't escape. Luffy transforms into Gear 5 and asks Bonnie for help. She discounts her abilities. Luffy encourages her. Brogy encourages her. Barney realizes her potential and transforms into a similar giant form. Luffy is excited about the fight and Bonnie's new abilities. Mars fires an energy beam at Luffy, burning him. Luffy tells his allies to strike him as hard as they can, while he grabs Mars. Luffy balloons his torso. His allies use Haki to strike him from behind, causing him pain. Luffy shoves Mars into his chest as Mars prepares his attack. Luffy uses Dawn Balloon to blast Mars away. Peter tries to suck up the giant's ship. Luffy strikes Peter. Warcury jumps off the coastline. Ymit punches Warcury away. Ymit addresses Luffy as Joy Boy. Ymit says it will fight for Luffy and faces the elders. Ymit's weapons fail, and it's damaged. Saturn leaps onto the giant's ship. Saturn attacks, trying to stab the giants and Bonnie. Luffy defends Bonnie. Barney recovers and says she'll defeat Saturn. Saturn mocks her. Luffy joins her. They unleash punches that blow holes through Saturn, knocking him off the ship. Vegapunk's message continues, saying the world's fate is in the hands of whoever finds the One Piece. Luffy sees Ymit severely damaged. Ymit apologizes for mistaking Luffy for Joy Boy, and asks for his name. Luffy shouts his name. Emmett notices the do. Ymit undoes a knot, unleashing Joy Boy's Haki. The Haki forces most of the 5 elders back to Marineford, knocks out most marines, and makes escape easier. The Sunny lands near Luffy. His crew asks what happened. He says he doesn't know. Luffy thanks Emmett. Emmett is no longer powered. Luffy's stamina runs out. He falls onto the Sunny. Nami catches him. The giants depart. Brogy picks up Luffy for the celebration, but Luffy asks them to wait. The giants halt the party. Luffy thinks he failed to save Vegapunk and cries while eating. Lilith awakens. She's annoyed by his appetite but says he didn't fail. The other Vegapunks are only dead. Physically, Luffy and his crew are shocked. Luffy perks up, meets Dory and Brogy, and says he's ready for the party. The giants have food. Luffy parties with his friends, knowing he fulfilled his promise to Vegapunk. The party continues. Luffy learns Dory and Brogy's duel is on hold, not cancelled. 2 days later, Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, Usopp, Nami, and the Sunny go missing. Mugen plucks them from the ocean and takes them to his master, Road of the new giant warrior pirates. Road is outraged because his captain is loyal to Luffy. Road keeps the Straw Hats asleep and puts them in the land of gods as a test. Luffy wakes up and finds Zoro and Sanji. They eat a large rabbit and go to Bigstein Castle. Usopp and Nami are being attacked by a cat that transformed into a lion. The trio saves them. They decide to find their remaining crew and the Sunny. As the Straw Hats go down from Bigstein Castle to the lower land of gods, a man tells them the Sun God Road's false identity rules there and they can get fodder rations in town. Luffy goes to find the Sun God's temple. His crew follows. Luffy runs into a one-way mirror, revealing the land of gods is a diorama. They rescue Chopper and have a conflict with the temple's guardians. The Straw Hats easily defeat the animals. Luffy defeats Hilmangard. Using Gear 5, the Sun God appears, outraged at the damage. A chase ensues. The Straw Hats ride the cat they beat earlier. The Sun God says they won't escape. The Straw Hats ride a scat through the land of gods. The Sun God tries to capture them with a net. Zoro and Sanji break out. Usopp tries to shoot through the diorama wall but can't. Luffy uses Gear 4 to shatter the wall. They avoid an encounter with Goldberg, Gerd, and Piper. Luffy leads them down the bridge, connecting Rhodes' castle to Elbaf's upper levels but stops, sensing a presence. He leaps off the bridge into Elbaf's wilderness and faces Loki, who says he'll destroy the world. Luffy is unfazed and celebrates arriving on Elbaf. Luffy is annoyed. Loki explains he's tied to Elbaf's treasure tree and will destroy any pirate crew if Luffy frees him by dawn. Loki says they're in Elbaf's underworld and the giant beasts there serve him. Luffy meets the beasts and befriends them, shocking everyone. Luffy's servants arrive, saying they fainted due to Shanks' actions on the island. Luffy perks up at Shanks' name. Luffy is surprised. Luffy knows Shanks. Loki badmouths Shanks. Luffy attacks him. Luffy's attack barely misses. Luffy apologizes. Luffy asks why Shanks was on Elbaf. Luffy refuses to answer and offers a deal. Luffy accepts. Luffy goes back to the bridge and meets Goldberg and Gerd, who finds him cute. Luffy is nervous to explain why he was in the underworld, but is spared by the cold. They reach the end of the bridge and find the other Straw Hats, who just struck down Road again. Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper run to the village on Elbaf's sun level. The Straw Hats are mesmerized. The rest of Luffy's crew arrive on a rainbow, shocking him. The remaining new giant warrior pirates arrive. There's a short meeting with Heijruden. Heijruden compliments Luffy, but thinks Luffy beat Big Mom. Heijruden declares a feast. The Straw Hats prioritize Robin's reunion with Jaguar D, Sol and leave in a spar piloted by Gerd. Robin says Luffy doesn't have to come. Luffy, like Ace with Shanks, wants to pay respects to someone who helped his crewmate, and at the Warrior's Spring, Luffy rushes to find Sol so they can return to the feast. Nami holds him back so Robin can have a proper meeting. They're told Sol collapsed. Luffy is angry. Sol's collapse was a greeting to Robin. Luffy happily watches them embrace. Most of his crew cries. After the reunion, Luffy gives an archaic thanks to Sol, confusing everyone. Lilith introduces herself and reveals a perfect Vegapunk clone, shocking Luffy. Sol's assistant Ainge tries to introduce herself as the school librarian, but Luffy runs off. Luffy, Usopp, and Zoro try to play with giant children but are disappointed they aren't acting like warriors. The teacher, Ripley, explains that King Harold's ideals made Elbaf's giants more interested in trade than war, and expresses disappointment that Luffy isn't in Gear 5. Luffy and Usopp play with the children on a giant swing, but scare them. Nami punishes them. Luffy is disappointed by the children's lack of warrior mentality. Colin tries to strike Luffy from behind. Luffy uses elephant gun but misses. Colin is excited to meet an emperor. Luffy is satisfied to meet someone who wants to be a warrior. Luffy, Usopp, Zoro, Sanji, Nami, Jinbe, and Brook return to the western village. Luffy is happy that Stanson, whom he helped on Sabaody, is doing well and is one of his subordinates. Jarul arrives, shocking Luffy with his size and the sword through his helmet.